Hello, this is a guy who likes fanfiction and is too lazy to read, so here is Into the Blue in audio form. Check the description for the links to the author. Chapter 27. What is the meaning of all this? Ash gasps. Dimitri breaks away from his bubble as he notices how the blue lions of this alternate world gawk at him like fish out of water. He puts Byleth back on the ground, though he shields her protectively in his arms, not wanting to let go of her completely. Especially after all this time. She did not just call you Dimitri, by the way. Sylvain says. Did she? Ingrid observes more closely. He surprisingly does look like His Majesty. Everyone turns to the man amongst them who stands still like stone. Just like him, he has blonde hair tied in a ponytail, though he has two eyes instead of one. This must be his other self. But not only that, he looks strikingly similar to the one he saw in Epimenides' domain. Everybody, settle down. A voice interrupts. What's with the ruckus? Dimitri flinches. He thought that he had forgotten that voice. Rodrigue steps in between the crowd. He looks just as Dimitri remembers him to be. After all this time, he stands here, alive. Rodrigue, Dimitri whispers. Rodrigue tilts his head, narrowing his eyes. He walks closer to him. You look familiar. Dimitri stands in place, jaw clenched at the sight of his second father. Byleth seems to notice his dumbfounded state. She clears her throat, lowering down one of Dimitri's arms that block her. This is Dimitri. Byleth purses her lips, glancing up at him. Dimitri. Mercedes puts a hand over her mouth. You mean another His Majesty? Impossible. Did his eyes widen? This must be a mistake. He looks too similar for it to be a mistake. Annette argues. I mean, he has the same hair and height and everything. Well, except the eye, Sylvain murmurs. Everyone gasps at his crass statement. What? Come on, that's seriously the only thing that's different. They look back and forth between the two lookalikes. This is creeping me out a little bit. Ash says, shaking his head in disbelief. And it is somehow nauseating. Felix gags. Tell me this isn't some strange nightmare of mine. But what if he's an imposter? Didu asks. Can't Agarthance take up another form? He raises his weapon in suspicion. Dimitri raises his hands in defense. Didu, please. Didu's breath hitches at the sound of his voice. Okay, stop. Sylvain rubs his arms as a shiver runs down his spine, squirming. He even sounds like His Majesty. The blue lions start to spiral in fear, raising their weapons uncertainly behind Didu. Dimitri is about to say something again, but Byleth steps in front of him. He won't hurt you. Byleth says. This man, he really is Dimitri. Just not the one you know of. She peers up at him, her emerald eyes widening his way. How he has missed her. I can't believe you're here. It's a long story. Dimitri says softly. But I would be more than happy to answer any questions you have. Maybe we should not have this conversation here. Dimitri pays attention to the purple-haired stranger amongst them who speaks up. We don't want the whole camp freaking out. Especially with our upcoming journey to Gareg Mach. Dimitri tilts his head. I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name. Shay. The man nods politely. Nice to meet you, again. Shay. He doesn't remember ever meeting a man with that name. It's too foreign of a name that he's sure he would remember it. Let's find somewhere more private. Shay looks at the blonde lookalike next to him, who hasn't moved a single muscle. Dimitri, are you okay? Right, it's his other self who speaks now, blinking out of his daze. Follow me. His other self brings them to one of the vacant tents at the end of the camp, closing its flaps to prevent anyone from overseeing their conversation. Dimitri doesn't let go of Byleth's hand as they stand next to each other, all eyes planted their way. He shifts uncomfortably at the stares of all his friends. They view him as some sort of enigma that he hasn't seen from them since the war, when he acted like a vicious beast instead of an honorable king. Let alone, seeing Rodrigue standing before him is enough to shake his core. Ria had prepared him for these circumstances, but now, as he has set foot in this world, he doesn't think that anybody could ever be prepared for how overwhelming it all is. Sylvain peers out of the small gap between the flaps. Okay, I guess the coast is clear for now. Though we won't have much time. We need to get moving by sundown. We still have a war to win. So you are at the middle of war? Dimitri ponders. That means Edelgard must be alive. What do you mean by that? Felix crosses his arms. You speak as if she's dead. Well, she is. Dimitri replies. I mean was. Or, what year is it? Imperial year 1182. Mercedes answers. 1182, Dimitri murmurs. Recollecting the events of that year only brings dark memories back to the surface of his mind. How he used to spiral into a savage killing after Byleth's disappearance and his scheduled execution for the death of his uncle. It was also when he also thought Didu had died in his place. He shakes the dark thoughts away from his head. Frankly, I do not remember that year looking as bright as this. Hold on. Sylvain blinks. Are you, from the future? All jaws drop to the floor at the revelation. No, I do not think so. Dimitri says. I believe we are from a whole different world entirely. How did the both of you get here then anyway? Shay asks, glancing between the two. Back in our world, Byleth begins. I went on a mission to eradicate those who slither in the dark. That was when I fought against Thales. During that battle, our powers collided and brought us here. So Thales is also not from here. No. That is why it has caused some problems in time and space. There are barriers that stand in between worlds to protect us from clashing with each other. However, those barriers have weakened because of us. Byleth frowns. Our powers were too overwhelming for the barriers to handle, and it is what allowed Epimenides and those who slither in the dark to grow in power. What does that mean? Ash asks. What kind of power do you have? I believe, Byleth grimaces, shifting her gaze at Dimitri. I still haven't told you yet either. It's all right. Dimitri smiles at her encouragingly. I understand. You may tell everyone. But Byleth's frown stays glued to her face as she reveals her secret. Lady Rhea gifted me the powers of the goddess, along with her conscience. As a result, I can manipulate time. It is how I transported to your world on accident when I tried to protect myself against Thales. Our powers, however, was too strong for the barriers to withstand. So that's what it is. Shay shakes his head in surprise. It's hard to believe, but that explains everything. How you can appear in one's place then appear in another the next. And why Arvel, Epimenides, was so adamant in me taking you down. Byleth nods, looking up at Dimitri again, her frown still etched on her face. I didn't know that you were caught up in all of it this whole time. I'm sorry. Not at all. Dimitri answers quickly. I came here with the help of Lady Rhea. She has temporarily bound me with her soul so that I can safely travel to this world. To be honest, I still can't believe that her spell worked. I still can't wrap my head around there being different worlds. Sylvain says. I mean, is that even possible? There is no other way to explain it. Dimitri answers. After all, by this year, I only just escaped my imprisonment by Cornelia for the death of my uncle. And it looks like to me that. He looks at his other self, who stares back at him rather intensely. You seem to have avoided all that. Cornelia. Shay's eyes widen. That lady who colluded with those who slither in the dark. She is one herself, isn't she? Ingrid clarifies. So it's true even here. Dimitri's eyes widen. Just what else is different? Rodrigue asks. Dimitri gulps. Every time he hears his voice, his heart aches. For one thing, I did not reunite with you all until 1185. I spent my years in the dark, having abandoned my people. Dimitri's eyes lower to the ground. I had spent 5 years stuck in my need for vengeance, wasting it away in savage murders, hoping to appease the voices inside my head. He catches his other self wince at that. A bore is always a bore. Felix scoffs. Why am I not surprised? Felix, Byleth warns. It's all right, beloved. Dmitri strokes the back of her hand that he's still holding with his thumb. Okay, and that? Sylvain points out. What on earth is going on between you two? Dmitri and Byleth exchange looks before looking back at him. We're married. Dmitri answers. Dmitri didn't think it was possible for their jaws to drop even further to the floor. Married. A collective gasp fills the tent. Hold on. Sylvain steps closer to them, staring at Byleth. You're the Queen of Faerghus. Byleth shifts her gaze, leaving the question unanswered. No wonder you spared us. Ash mutters. And saved our lives. Ingrid adds. You wanted to side with the kingdom. Seriously. Sylvain sputters. He whips his head back to his other self. Dmitri, are you hearing this? But his other self, once again, remains silent at the news, only keeping his astonished gaze from Byleth to him. But if you're married, Annette starts. Does that mean the kingdom is well and prospering? Dmitri nods. We won the war and defeated Edelgard in 1185. 3 years later than what I believe you will be achieving soon. So the kingdom emerged victorious, his other self finally speaks, shock laced in his words. Dmitri pauses for a moment. Yes. That's great news. Mercedes beams. This just gives me more confidence of the outcome of this final battle. Still. A king married to a mercenary. Rodrigue's eyes widen. That is, unheard of. Dmitri stares at his father figure, getting over his initial shock as soon as he feels Byleth's hand tense up in his. Times are changing. Crests and relics are being dismantled for its role in serving inequality throughout the nation. It does not play an important part anymore in choosing the rightful leader of a house. Let alone, the rightful king and queen to the throne. He looks at his wife fondly, his heart swelling at the sight of her. It hits him once more as to just how long she's been away from him. It doesn't matter if she is a mercenary or not. He says with confidence. There is nobody more suited than her to rule the kingdom by my side. He can hear everyone hold in their breaths at his declaration. Byleth stares up at him, lips slightly parted, and all he does is smile as gently and warmly as he can for her. As he always does. Sylvain whistles in awe. Crests and relics being dismantled, huh? That's a pretty amazing feat you guys achieved there. You know, it was your idea. Dmitri smiles at him. The you in our world never stopped advocating for it. My idea, huh? Sylvain blinks in stupor, a rare blush dusting his cheeks. He clears his throat. Well, it's good to know I still have the same ideals back there. What about the rest of us? Ash asks. How are we like? Curiosity seems to strike the Blue Lions now. Well, most of you are serving the kingdom as knights, like you, Ingrid and Dedu. He looks at Mercedes. You are staying as a cleric at the monastery. And the rest of you are fulfilling your roles as dukes and duchesses. He turns to Annette. Like you and Felix for House Frildarius. Everyone squeals at that, turning at the two who stand very still, faces turning beet red. Crap. Dmitri should not have said that out loud. Annette stammers, unable to form a coherent sentence. Oh my, that is interesting news indeed. Rodrigue's eyes widen, turning at his son and future daughter-in-law. I did not know that you were fancying a lady, Felix. What? Felix blurts out. Oh my goddess. Sylvain laughs. I never thought you had it in you, Faye. Shut up. Felix shrivels down, trying to hide within the group as he only turns redder. Wait, who else is married? Sylvain seems to thoroughly enjoy the drama. Maybe I shouldn't have said anything. Dimitri's frown deepens, feeling absolute guilt for revealing it so crassly. Besides, I think they wouldn't be the only ones embarrassed anymore. No, please tell us. Felix hisses, hairs standing up in fury. Don't just drag us down by ourselves. Dmitri winces, shifting uncomfortably in place, unsure of how to steer the conversation back to normal. You get married too, Sylvain. Byleth cuts in, breaking the news without hesitation. Sylvain's teasing smile fades, being replaced with a look of surprise. Me? Yes, and you have a son. More squeals ensue around the tent. Sylvain has a son. Ash gasps. Actually, I think I can imagine him as a father more so than as a husband. Hey. Sylvain whines at him. What's that supposed to mean? Who is the mother? Ingrid asks. Dimitri and Byleth only stay silent as they stare at her. Sylvain's breath hitches. Oh. Byleth is about to say the answer, but Sylvain finally flushes a deep red now, as he's the first to catch the answer behind their silent, directed stares. Actually, never mind. Sylvain yells a bit too loudly. Forget it, don't say anything. That's not fair. Annette argues. Perhaps we should stay back on topic. Dimitri interrupts, clearing his throat. Unfortunately, we do not have much time, as much as I want to stay and tell you everything I know. Wait, but what about me? Shay joins in the conversation now. Am I still a commander for your army? Dimitri blinks at him, frowning. No. I'm afraid we have never met back in my world. I see. Shay strokes his chin. Things really are different. Indeed. Dimitri agrees. That is why it creates some risk if those who do not belong come and interfere in your world. I have been told by Lady Rhea that I must bring Byleth back with me before it creates any further danger. Moreover, I do not want our friends to worry if we remain here for too long. Let alone, put his wife's life on the line if the barriers fully break. He doesn't want to imagine ever using that last resort. But he keeps that thought to himself. That's fast. Sylvain blinks. You gave us a lot of information to process in just a few minutes. I apologize. Dimitri says. But if you have to leave, then we must inform the rest of the mercenaries. Rodrigue tells Byleth. Isn't your father the captain of the mercenary band? Annette asks. What's going to happen if you leave? You mean Geralt? Dimitri sputters. So he's alive here too. Her eyebrows furrow for a moment, as if she's concentrating on something in her head. Then she inhales sharply. Beloved. Dimitri whispers. Her expression turns frustrated. Because I am the vessel of the goddess, I only have one existence. There will be no more Byleth to roam this world. In fact, there was never supposed to be one to begin with. When I infiltrated this world, it has molded itself to give meaning to the existence of the goddess. Geralt, he was never supposed to be a father to begin with. Until I came. Byleth's shoulders slump. She speaks in a low whisper. In the end, my existence here has always been meaningless. Silence fills the tent, but Dimitri's gaze remains on his wife, who has a rare look of distress on her face. Beloved dash. Byleth dash. Dimitri realizes someone calls out to her in unison. His gaze catches that of his other self, who looks back at him in surprise. Once again, his other self looks away, swallowing down his words. Hey, don't be like that. Shay is the first to break the silence instead. It does. Without you, we wouldn't have gotten this far. Exactly. Ingrid adds. You have saved so many of our lives. Who knows if I would still be standing here without you. Not to mention your great help in defeating those who slither in the dark. Ash nods enthusiastically. And unraveling the mysteries to my brother and the Black Eagle's illnesses. Mercedes remarks. You've done enough. Sylvain winks. Just head back to your world, and we'll take things from here. Easy peasy. But the war. Come on, we're not that weak. Shay grins. It's not like we'll lose without you. We got this. Instead of relief, Dimitri notices that a piece of life has faded from Byleth's eyes. Right. She whispers blankly. We will have to get going soon too. Felix says. We can't let the troops wait for too long. He turns to Byleth. I guess this is goodbye. She silently nods. This is very abrupt. Dida says, his lips curving slightly downwards. It is a shame that you could not stay with us until the very end. We're going to miss you. Annette frowns, tackling her into a hug. I loved sharing my treats with you. I hope you do that more with my other self back there, okay? Me too. Mercedes giggles, joining the hug. Bye, Byleth. Ash is next. Then Ingrid, followed by Sylvain, who drags both Felix and Dido with him. Dimitri smiles gently at the sight as his friends shower her with love. But it falters slightly as he sees that Byleth has no trace of emotion in her face. He then glances at his other self, who simply stands at the corner of the tent, arms crossed, and gaze lowered. He is about to say something to him, but he quietly leaves the tent, unnoticed by the rest. Except by Rodrigue, who is about to walk out as well and follow him, but Dimitri stops him. Perhaps he needs some time to register it all. Dimitri says. I believe, this must be quite a shock for him. Rodrigue's eyes widen briefly before he lets out a chuckle. Ah, yes. Pardon me. It is still quite baffling to see two versions of you. Trust me, I feel the same. Dimitri smirks. But I am truly relieved to see that you are well. Rodrigue pauses, looking at his left eye, which is covered by his eye patch. You must have gone through a lot in your world. Rodrigue's gaze softens. Yet you managed to bring the kingdom back to prosperity and emerged victorious. I suppose there is not much to worry about now. I have full faith that we will win this war under your leadership. Rodrigue, Dimitri gulps. I never got to tell you how grateful I am for all your guidance. Seeing you now, I need you to know that I would have never led the kingdom to victory if it weren't for you. Though Dimitri says nothing about his fate, Rodrigue hums, seemingly understanding the implication. You don't have to tell me anything for me to know that. Rodrigue smiles. It seems to me that you have risen to the occasion to become a great king, and I say this with the utmost pride. For that, it is I who should be grateful. Dimitri does not know what's gotten into him, but he brings the man into a giant hug. Thank you. Dimitri murmurs. For everything. Rodrigue tenses up at first, startled by the sudden gesture, but he eventually returns it with ease. You were always quite the sentimental one, weren't you, Your Majesty? Rodrigue chuckles. In that moment, it is as if one voice that haunted the back of his mind for so long has finally disappeared. While everyone leaves the tent, Shay tells the two of them to remain inside, while he fetches for Geralt. Dimitri's heart beats rapidly as the man steps into the tent not many moments later, standing before him in the flesh. Your Majesty. Geralt's brows raise in surprise as soon as his eyes land on him. What happened to your eye? Dimitri's mind suddenly turns blank. Good afternoon, Father. I mean Captain Dad. Sir Eisner. Mr. Geralt. He blabbers, cheeks flushing a deep red. How could he let himself slip in such an important introduction such as this? He takes a deep bow, hoping to hide his blush. Whoa, there. Geralt blinks, watching him in full amusement. There's no need for that. You're the king, for crying out loud. Dimitri stands up straight immediately, legs shaking. For the love of the goddess, Dimitri can't remember feeling this nervous since he asked Byleth to marry him. Geralt leans closer to his daughter. Don't tell me you're the one who did that to his eye. Geralt whispers. Did he pull some shady moves on you? No, of course not. Byleth says immediately. This is my husband. Husband. Now, Geralt wears a full face of confusion. What in the world? Dimitri panics. I came to ask for her hand in marriage. Marriage? Geralt gasps. That's fast dash. I mean we're already married. Dimitri curses to himself. Not that I never wanted to ask you. I always wanted to, in fact. So let me ask again for her hand, to return back to my world perhaps. Smooth. He is truly ruining everything for himself. Your world. Geralt processes his words for a while before it fully dawns on him. Ah, I see. You're the one that my kid actually married. Dimitri's mouth turns agape. How dash? She told me everything. The man smirks. She's been trying hard to get back to you. I'm glad that you were doing the same. Shows me that she's in good hands. Of course. Dimitri's anxiety washes away briefly as he speaks with conviction. I would never just stand back and leave her behind. I figured. Geralt seems pleased by his words. Well, based on what you just told me, looks like she has to go soon. Indeed. Dmitri nods. I'm afraid I do not know how much time we have left before the situation worsens. It would be best for us to go when we can. I see. Well, I'm not too happy about it, but I expected this to happen sooner or later. Gerald smiles. But don't worry, Sonny. You have my blessing. She's a grown-up, after all. Dmitri holds his breath, his heart fluttering at the remark. Right. Thank you, sir. I won't let you down. He bows again. Gerald grumbles. Seriously, enough of that. It's kind of embarrassing. Sorry, sir. He stands back up abruptly, hands tense and clammy by his sides. Gerald chuckles at that. I guess it's time for me to let go now. You can't stay with me forever. Gerald ruffles his daughter's hair. I'm really happy for you, kid. You take care of yourself, all right. But Deshbyleth starts. Know that I'll always be with you. Gerald holds her for a moment. In another world or not, that's not gonna change, got it? Dimitri's heart swells with a flurry of emotions at Byleth being able to reunite with his father once more. But there is an inkling of concern that sprouts within him once again when he sees that same, blank expression return on her face. For some reason, Byleth is not too happy with the news. The two finally have a moment alone now, as Gerald readies to dispatch the mercenaries for the upcoming battle. In their silence, Dimitri's feelings of yearning resurface, and his chest tightens from the relief of it all. He brings her to his arms once again, caressing her cheeks as tears brim his eyes. You look as beautiful as the day you left. A tear rolls down his cheek as he kisses her gently on every part of her face. From her forehead to her eyelids to her nose and her lips. He stares at her, engraving every single detail of her face once more, as if the time apart has blurred his memory of her. Byleth frowns. I'm sorry. I've troubled you again. Please don't apologize. Dimitri brings her to his arms, relishing in her warmth. This isn't your fault. Still, you left the kingdom because of me. The Blue Lions are there helping me protect it, and Lady Rhea ensured that her spell will bring us back safely. So you mustn't worry. He strokes her hair fondly. Once we retrieve you, everything will return to the way it is. There is a long moment of silence before Byleth speaks again. Why do I need to go back? Dimitri's hand stops combing through her hair. He breaks away from their embrace, looking at her. Really looking at her this time. And he realizes how jaded her eyes have become. They are distant. Hollowed out of any hope or light that used to gleam in her eyes. Epimenides is destroyed. Byleth continues. The world is saved. Those risks you spoke of, they don't exist anymore. Dimitri blinks. Even so, you need to go home. Why? Why? Dimitri repeats, utterly confused by her question. That's where you belong. She exhales harshly. I didn't expect you to come here. I was ready to live my life as a mercenary and move on. Move on. His heart falls. What do you mean move on? I didn't think you would come. Byleth says. You shouldn't have. Beloved, of course I would come. Dimitri's voice turns urgent. I would have never stopped until I found you again. I don't ever want to lose you. Maybe you should want that. Dimitri steps back, flinching slightly at her words. His heart quickens its pace. How could you say that? What is making you say all these things? All these hurtful, painful things? You haven't seen it, Dimitri. She speaks quietly. You're happy here. She reaches out to him, caressing his eye patch gently with her thumb. Your eyes, they are not filled with torment and anguish here. They look clearly at the bright future before you. She steps away from him now, turning away. It made me realize how you struggle because of me. I see it all clearly now. How much more you could have achieved for the kingdom without me holding you back. All of this would have been the future for you if you never met me at all. That is not true. Dimitri follows her in haste, holding her by the shoulders so that she looks at him. Beloved, I never knew you thought this way. Is that what you think? If I never met you, if none of us ever met you, we will be better off. You're happier here, Dmitri. She repeats. Everyone is happier here. Do you truly think that I am unhappy? He questions with a deepened frown on his lips. The me right now, with all of these scars, is someone who is unhappy. Rodrigue is alive. Byleth argues. My father is alive. Does being without grief mean happiness to you? Do the deaths of Rodrigue, of your father, mean that we have to forbid ourselves from happiness and from moving on? I just mean that you did not have to go through such suffering. The grief, the pain of loss is how I have come to cherish and love those I hold dear more than I ever thought possible. Dmitri continues. Without that grief, I would have stayed a wretched beast driven for revenge. Without pain, I would have never known how to love. That. I would rather go through all of that and carry that pain and suffering with me than to ever live without the love that you have given me. The love that all of you have given me. He cradles her face gently in his hands. I am happier now because of that. I need you to see that. You only say that because you haven't lived in this world. Byleth presses. You haven't seen who you are without me. Dmitri hisses, turning away. She is doing it again. Pushing him away, just like she did when she left the kingdom before she disappeared from their world completely. We are the ones who created this future and saved the kingdom from war. He says lowly. Why can't we allow ourselves this fragment of happiness amongst all the sacrifices we have made? Why are you pushing me away? Because you don't need me. Byleth yells at him despairingly, her voice actually booming around the tent. She has never yelled at him before. Dmitri only stares in shock as she breathes heavily, shaking her head. I am useless as an archbishop, she says. That's not true. Dmitri insists. As a queen. You're absolutely not. As a mother. Byleth. He growls. Let alone, as your wife. Byleth cries. Dmitri, I cannot do this. I am not needed. You do not have to be needed. He argues. You are not some tool to be used. Then what is the point of my existence? Byleth asks. What else am I supposed to live for if I am not needed? Beloved, I don't need you to do anything. Before he lets Byleth dwell in her thoughts any longer, he continues, bending down so that he can pour his sincerity into her eyes. I am not with you because I need something from you. I am with you because I love you. She frowns all the more. That doesn't make any sense. Answer me this, he says gently. Are you with me because you need something from me? No, she blinks in distress. Then why can't it be the same for me? He strokes her hair. Why can't I just be with you because I want to be by your side? Because it will only cause more trouble if you do. It is never trouble to me. Do you not remember the slanders of the nobles? She challenges. How you toss and turn in your sleep from their pressures. How I cannot even fulfill the most basic duties of a queen. Of course I do, but none of that matters. Dmitri's voice comes out like a plea. But Byleth shakes her head furiously, his plea falling on deaf ears as she breaks away from him. I cannot keep doing this to you, Dmitri. I cannot go back there. I cannot be with you anymore. It is as if she just stabbed his heart with a dagger. He watches her clutching her hair and curling into herself. He has never seen his wife so distraught, not even when her father died. For the first time, she looks so small. So fragile. And that's when it hits him. Just how much he has failed her for her to torment herself in such a manner. He did not protect her enough from all the maltreatment that the kingdom and church alike has done to her. All that they have done in ruining her image of herself. And even now, he has failed in protecting her from this world and the darkness that must have tortured her soul to make her think in this very way. In the end, he has contributed to all the suffering she has gone through. It makes Dmitri's heart bleed, tears welling up in his eyes. Please, beloved, just come back with me first, okay? Dmitri's voice wavers slightly. I can't. She begs. We will figure this out together afterward. Whatever you decide then. I will follow. And that terrifies him. For he does not know what that will entail. Once they return, she may choose to walk away from him and be persuaded by the dark thoughts in her mind. But as long as Dmitri is alive and still stands by her side, he will do what he can to reassure her a million times over, and make sure that she wins against the darkness. Just like what she's done for him countless times before. Dmitri walks discreetly at the edge of the camp away from any nearby soldiers, allowing Byleth for some space to recollect herself. He wipes a sole tear that rolls down his cheek, sniffling as he carries the weight of their conversation. He stops in his tracks, however, when he sees his other self, staring distantly at the sky. There is only a brief hesitation before Dmitri steels himself to approach him. His other self takes notice of his footsteps. He straightens himself up, narrowing his gaze at him. Dmitri glowers back. Here he is, finally having a chance to speak to himself. One-on-one. I do not know what she has gone through here. Dmitri starts. She won't tell me much. But I know what she looks like when she's hurting. And I especially know if it is because of me. He remembers all the times her face saddened back in the war when he was blinded by his rage. Even amidst his vengeance, he was never ignorant of her, and how her eyes turned downcast at the sight of him. How she would flinch when he yelled threats at her and the rest of the Blue Lions. It's unforgivable. Even now, he still tries to atone for the sins he's committed to the one person he loves. As someone who knows you better than anyone, I can sympathize with you. Dmitri continues. What you're going through, it's difficult. There are many burdens that you hold. Many expectations that the kingdom has put onto you since a young age. I understand it. Then, his glare darkens. But as her husband, I will never forgive anyone who brings her anguish, especially if it's because of you or me. Too many people have hurt her enough. I do not want us to add to the mix of it all. His other self remains silent, glare diverted to the floor. Dmitri takes a deep breath, readying himself to leave. He supposes there's no point talking to him. But his other self finally speaks. Why? Dmitri looks back at his other self, who turns his way now. Why is she together with somebody like you? His tone is painted with disgust as he asks the question. I'm still not quite sure myself, to be honest with you. Dmitri confesses. There are many things that could have made her turn her back on me, but she never did. She has always been kind that way. His gaze softens. Though I do think there's one thing. Despite not knowing why, I still believe I can allow myself to love her. And allow her to love me. And day by day, I try to love her better than I did the day before. His other self's eyes widen. But, that's impossible. Dmitri exhales softly. His wife is so determined in convincing him that he is better off without her. That the man in front of him is a happier one. But looking at him now, Dmitri knows how wrong she is. For he knows himself too well, even if it's in a different body. This Dmitri hasn't found his happiness. Despite the confidence he displays, this man is just as lost as he was those many years ago without his beloved by his side. He navigates the world with a false conviction as to what he believes is best for the kingdom based on the expectations that he carries on his back. I felt the same way you do for a long time. Dmitri says. I believed it so deeply that I was undeserving of any love. For I was a lowly beast, nothing more. He frowns, empathy washing over him as he looks at his other self. But what you believe about yourself, know that, it isn't true. His other self's breath hitches in surprise at the sincerity of his words. Then he growls, looking away from him. Listening to advice from myself. This truly is a twisted joke. His expression turns weary, as if he has given up on spewing malice in the meantime. How did you meet her? His other self asks. She was a professor at the officers' academy. Dmitri answers. Did you not meet her there? No. The academy closed early due to the war. We were unable to complete our studies. His other self looks back at the distance. She was an enemy when I met her. I didn't have the luxury of knowing her for as long as you do. But I'm sure it's the same with you. Dmitri replies. You fell in love with her at first sight, did you not? His other self's jaw tightens, refusing to confirm it. I cannot blame you. The moment we laid eyes on her, we became a lost cause. He smiles faintly, reminiscing on the moment he saw her taking down the bandits. How he first paid attention to her large, round eyes that narrowed with focus. Then at her hair that swayed with the wind, never once covering her field of vision despite it falling freely below her shoulders. She has always been breathtaking, ever since the beginning. But his smile fades now. We will have to split ways once you head out for Garreg Mach. I'm sorry, truly, that it has to end this way. He looks around the camp, seeing the kingdom banner waving against the breeze from afar. I do admit, the world looks more hopeful here. The war is stained with less blood on your hands. And I am confident that you are to emerge victorious far earlier than what I was able to achieve, with far less casualties. Perhaps if things were different, I might even say this is far more ideal for the kingdom. He speaks without any trace of envy, instead only with guilt. But, she doesn't feel safe here. I want her to feel safe for once. I need to bring her back to where she is surrounded by people who love her. That is why I do not want her being involved in the calamities of war any longer. She has been tormented by this pointless war for too long. And with the way Dimitri is now, he knows that he would not trade his experiences for this world or for another. For he knows that without Byleth, without all the grief he has suffered from, he would have never discovered what it is he truly wanted to do as king. What he wanted the kingdom to become. What he wanted to stand for. I hope you understand. Dimitri's words are laced with finality as he speaks. His other self closes his eyes, letting out a soft sigh. Do what you must. He mutters. Dimitri watches him for a moment. Before he turns away, he tells his other self one more thing. You deserve to find your own happiness. He tells him. I want you to know that. Dimitri walks away, leaving it at that. And so, he takes a breath, readying himself for his return home with his beloved by his side. Chapter 28. Byleth paces around the tent, rubbing her face exasperatedly. Her chest aches more painfully than it ever did before. Seeing her husband again has opened a Pandora's box of emotions that she is not accustomed to. The relief and yearning that first swelled when he brought her into his arms has now transformed to the unbearable guilt and remorse as the reminders of her failures play in her mind one by one. So now, as her goal finally stands right in front of her, now that the opportunity to go home stands before her, she wonders if it is really the best choice. She can simply just remain here as a mercenary, while he fulfills his duty as king contently without her standing in the way of his dreams. But even if she does remain here, she is not needed, even as a mercenary, for she was never her father's daughter to begin with. She has ruined the narrative of this world because of her recklessness. Her father could have lived a life without carrying this needless burden. And when he finally survives, it is in a world where you are not necessary anymore. Your duty does not allow you to love. It will not allow you to keep those you hold dear close. That is what gods are after all. They stray away from humanity, watching them from afar. Never able to reach close enough. Epimenides was right all along. She is only capable of hurting those she keeps close. As a vessel, it is best to only watch from afar. So she sits by her desk, taking a breath as she settles down her decision. She takes a pen and paper, ready to write. It wasn't long ago that people knew me only as the Ashen Demon and looked at me with dread. But thanks to you, I now find myself surrounded by friends with whom I share a common cause. She fiddles with her quill for a moment. Was I right to go down this path? I can't say. For she has made too many mistakes. But I see a glimmer of hope at the end of it. Hope for Dimitri. Hope for the Blue Lions to accomplish what they desire without her by their side. Because in spite of it all, she still wants to cheer for them as they approach their victory. And that's more than enough reason to forge on. She signs off the letter, placing the pen down. She is ready to say goodbye to this world. And when she is to arrive back to her real world, she will figure out how she can finally let Dimitri remove himself from her burdens once and for all. She opens her drawer to get an envelope. But her hand freezes as the silver band lays inside it, shiny and unused. She picks it up, holding it between her fingers. She had been so adamant that she would never to see it again. But looking at it now, Byleth knows what she must do with it. The troops are already at the gate, ready to march out. Well, Looks like this is goodbye for real this time. Gerald says. Despite his smile, the sadness in his eyes mirror Byleth's own. She extends her arms, bringing him into a hug. Thanks a lot for everything, kid. Gerald mumbles against her shoulder. Been a whole lot of fun with ya. She pauses, swallowing thickly. This truly is the last time. In her world, she will never be able to see him again. So she makes herself say it. I love you, father. She tells him. Really? I'm going to miss you. He breaks away from the hug, gazing tenderly at her. Love you too, kid. She notices that tears start to brim his eyes, but he affectionately ruffles her hair as if to distract her from the sentimentality of it all. Now go, he tilts his head, gesturing to the front. Say the rest of your goodbyes and get home safely, got it? She follows the direction of where her father is tilting it and spots Dimitri's back as he stares at the terrain beyond the camp. She slowly brings herself to the front where he stands. Dimitri, she calls. He looks back at her with his azure eyes. He does not greet her or say anything in particular. Though, he stares at her with raised brows and lips that are parted in surprise. She hands him the letter that is now sealed in a brown envelope. This is for all of you. He takes it from her, flipping the envelope in his hands. I will let them know. He murmurs. There is a silence that passes between the two, and Dimitri's face grows more conflicted as time passes by. You, he says lowly, shaking his head. You married me? Yes. She murmurs back. I still don't understand. Dimitri's brows furrow in bewilderment. Why? Byleth sighs softly. Instead of answering, she moves closer to him, opening his hand and placing the ring on his palm. What is this? Dimitri observes it carefully. This is yours. Byleth says quietly. It has always been. And it will always be. He only gapes at her, once again, falling speechless. She smiles sadly at him. His breath stills when her hand finds his cheek, caressing it gently. Your hand, he whispers, relishing in her touch. It's so warm. Has it always been? As the memory of Dimitri's hand in hers under the rain come back to her, all she can do is give him a pained smile. Take care, Dimitri. She says, taking her hand away from him. She must let go. Byleth stands by the gate, watching the kingdom army march further and further away from the base camp onto Gareg Mach. Dimitri, her father, the Blue Lions, all of them slip away from their fingers. Guilt overcomes her, knowing that these are versions of the Blue Lions that are happier, and unscathed by the cold bloodbath of war. And she wonders if the Blue Lions back home will scorn her if they saw who they could have been. What life they could have lived. It is as if Epimenides cackles behind her, agreeing with her and admonishing her of her cruelty and tyranny. She is interrupted from her thoughts, however, as her husband walks over to her. The two look at each other for a long moment. Dimitri fiddles with his hands uncertainly, giving her a comforting smile. Even with all the horrible things she told him, he still tries to ease her mind. It makes her want to cry. Are you ready? He whispers, holding out his hand. She nods meekly. He takes her hand in his as he pushes open the gate. The walk is silent, but Dimitri's presence is loud all the same, as he looks at her every now and then, watching over her fondly and ever so warmly, while he squeezes her hand to know that he is there. It makes her remember the day the Dimitri of this alternate world held her hand as they searched for her father. He has always been gentle towards her. No matter the world. No matter the timeline. It makes her chest twist in sorrow once more. The sky thunders. Byleth looks up, but there is no trace of cloudiness in the sky, whilst the sun shines brightly. She looks back at her husband, who now focuses on the path before him. How do we get back? Byleth asks. Lady Rhea will open a portal by the outskirts of Magdrid Way. Dimitri answers. It is where I opened the portal to arrive here and where it contains the most energy source for Lady Rhea to exert her magic to bring us back. I see. Another thunder. This time, Dimitri looks up as well. Suddenly, the sky darkens, turning a vivid purple. Dimitri's eye widens. This is The sky shatters, and a vortex starts to open at its center. Byleth gawks at the scene before her. It looks oddly familiar. Then, the ground grumbles, splitting into two, forming huge cracks along the terrain. What's happening? She sputters. Suddenly, her heart beats agonizingly. Beloved! Dimitri cries. She grimaces, clutching onto her chest as she maintains her breathing. I'm okay. This pain, she only ever felt it when Epimenides lurked by. And you are right. Sothis speaks, appled. Epimenides is still alive, after all. How can this be? What are you talking about? Byleth asks. I thought they defeated him. No. Sothis gasps, a realization dawning over her. No, they did not. They may have defeated him in the astral plane, but his vessel, he still lives. Him living has made Epimenides grow and spread his power across the universe, and has allowed the darkness to prevail. It hits Byleth now as well. Because Epimenides merged with Shay. Just like she did with Sothis all those years ago. It is how the mercenary still retains the power of the Agarthans through his magic sword. Because his presence still exists, he still has the power to consume the darkness. It is why Thales still survives. The vortex before us is proof of it all. It is the beginning of the end. Byleth stares at the vortex that only swirls bigger and bigger. The beginning of the end. What do we do? Byleth asks. Should we find him again? No. By the time you find and defeat Epimenides, the barriers will have completely become broken and the world will be beyond repair. The only way now is to seal the barriers through my power. Then how do we seal it? But Sothis remains silent. Sothis, what else is there? Byleth pushes. How can we seal the barriers? She hears Sothis squirm, but she does not say anything more. Beloved, we must get going. Dimitri urges. It looks like we do not have much time before dash. The ground cracks even deeper and beams of purple emerge from beneath. Dimitri drags Byleth out of the way, wrapping her around his arms. More beams burst through the ground, shooting all the way up to the sky. Dimitri curses, pulling Byleth by her hand. We have to move. He charges through, avoiding the cracks and beams that shoot from it. But they do not get too far until a larger beam shoots from underground, splitting the Earth's crust to its core. It's getting worse. Byleth shouts amongst the chaos around them. We must go forward, beloved, before it is too late. But the sky. That does not matter. He argues. If we return on time, we can bring you back safe and sound. It will be too late by then. Epimenides is alive. I have to fix this. Sothis. She calls out. Answer me. I. Sothis winces. She groans, blood boiling as her anger directed at herself grows. How many times must I fail you? You never failed me. Dimitri's voice cracks. Never. Look at it, Dimitri. She yells, pointing up at the sky. She grits her teeth. I hold the power of the goddess. Why can't I do anything to stop this? She clenches her fists. Her pupils dilate as they stare wildly at her husband. I can't keep being the reason for destruction. I should have the power to fix all this. Enough. I refuse for you to save the world at your expense once again. Byleth stops for a moment, frustration shifting into suspicion at the words, along with his face that is full of anguish. Dimitri, you know something, don't you? What must I do? He tenses up at that. And that's enough to confirm her answer. Sothis. One of you answer me. Byleth's voice is demanding as she yells at the goddess. And finally, she relents. The seal. Sothis speaks as if the words are difficult for her to utter. Is you, child. Byleth falls silent as Sothis' words, its implication sinking in, slowly, yet heavily all the same. And when she looks at Dimitri, his face pales as if he knows that she discovered her answer. What must I do? She asks Sothis. You end this all just like how it all began. Take with you who created this world and surrender yourself to the planes of space and time. Byleth turns around abruptly. I must go back and find Thales. But Dmitri grabs her wrist, making her stay put. No, Byleth. He growls. I won't let you. I can stop all of this. She says. I can use my power to become the seal. No, Dmitri rushes over to her, holding her hand. We can still make it. She looks up at the sky, where the vortex swirls. This is my fate. Byleth murmurs. This is what I'm destined to do. No, it is not. Dmitri holds her shoulders, growling frustratedly. Beloved, you are so much more than all of this. We just have to leave this world immediately, and this can all stop. Please. But there's not enough time. Byleth's throat starts to become thick with tears. I have to do this. Stop this. You can't keep doing this to yourself. He begs. His voice raises in panic now, booming in a volume that he has never directed at her before. Your life does not always have to be put in the line for the world to get better. Her husband's eye begins to water. How many times must you throw yourself away as the end-all be-all until you realize that you matter too? She gulps. What other choice do I have? This is what everybody expects from me. What they all want from me since the beginning. But what do you want, Byleth? Dmitri's soul eye bores into hers, its azure blue gleaming with conviction, aching her to stay. What do you want? He repeats, crying it out like a whisper. Her lip quivers as she sees the devastation on his face. She always knew what she wants. What she wants is to be with him. To live their life as husband and wife. To always be by his side and support him. She wants to love him as long as he'd let her. For eternity, if that's even possible. But she cannot do that. She will never be able to do that. For the world has made it clear. She is a tool. A vessel of the progenitor god. Destined to stand in the sidelines, only to be wielded when necessary. Nothing more. That is why she cannot tell him. She cannot afford to be selfish. So, she does the only thing she knows she can do. She kisses him. She kisses him with all the passion she's kept away for so long. He pulls away briefly, but she brings him back in again, not wanting to ever let go of him. She kisses him so passionately and desperately, pouring all the love she possibly could to the only man she will ever love. She kisses him, hoping that at the very least, it will send her message across. That in another universe, perhaps it is different. In another universe, she is not a tool nor a vessel. She is a human, who can simply be. Who can love unapologetically without any duty stopping her from doing so. But alas, in this universe, it is not possible. It can never be. The only thing she can do now, is save the man that she loves from this madness. And give him the peaceful life that he deserves. And she will be damned if she cannot do this one job without fail. I love you, Dmitri. She whispers, caressing his cheeks. I love you so much. I always will. Byleth, he hisses almost painfully. Thank you, for everything. She whimpers, a tear rolling down her cheek. She activates the divine pulse. Time freezes for a moment and she sweeps him off of his feet. He grunts in surprise as he meets the ground. His eyes look up at her in panic. No, Byleth. Byleth does not miss a beat as she turns on her heel, dashing for the church. Byleth. His shouts are desperate, and all she can do is keep running as her tears fall like rain swaying with the wind. Byleth gallops away on a steed she snatched from an empty stable. From the distance, she sees the pillars of Gareg Mach and the cries of soldiers. The purple beams do not seem to catch up to Gareg Mach just yet, but the vortex above only grows bigger, thundering like a storm. She makes a beeline for the church, storming in as fast as she can. The ground rumbles beneath her. The horse whinnies in fear, and Byleth loses her balance. She falls down to the ground and the horse flees frantically from the booming noises and unstable footing. She scrambles on her feet, dashing towards the church, where the clash between blue and red is still ongoing. But in a glimpse, it is easy to tell the amount of soldiers that still stand are dominantly wearing the kingdom emblem in their uniform. Dmitri! Byleth yells in the outskirts, searching desperately for him or any of the blue lions. Byleth! She whips her head toward the voice. But she is not greeted by a blue lion, but rather the leader of the golden deer. Claude. She calls out. Well, you're running late to the party. Claude comments. Byleth rushes over to him, but immediately freezes in her tracks when she recognizes the lady standing beside him. Lady Rhea tilts her head when she catches her staring. You must be. Byleth is at a loss for words. But quickly, she snaps herself out of her surprise, focusing on her main goal. Where is Dimitri? She asks. Probably cleaning things up right about now. He smirks then eyes the entrance. Oh, well, speak of those who slither in the dark. Looks like they finished on schedule. Dimitri and Shay step out of the doors. Byleth doesn't even wait for the crowd to cheer before she rushes up the steps. Dimitri. Byleth. The two men gasp in unison. What are you doing here? Shay asks. Then his eyes look up at the sky. Whoa, what the hell is that? I need to find Thales. Byleth says quickly. Where is he? Thales? We defeated him. The only one left is Edelgard. Defeated? Byleth repeats. She looks up at the sky that still looks as ominous as ever. No, it can't be. It's a trap dash. As if on cue, the purple beams start to shoot from the ground around them. Soldiers scream at the sight, fleeing in panic. Byleth. Dimitri pulls her away as a beam shoots up just beneath her feet. The church, having just been saved, is now starting to go down in shambles from all the destruction. This is bad. Shay says. We have to get away from here. Suddenly, a frightening roar is heard from inside the church. The front gate explodes, making them fly backwards. Byleth rolls down the steps, landing roughly onto the gravel floor. She coughs at the dust that gathers around. When she opens her eyes, she is unable to believe the large, grotesque form before her, hovering over the entrance of the church. Edelgard towers over them in her hegemon form. Her crimson eyes glare menacingly at Byleth, which crinkle from her sinister smile. Felstar, Edelgard speaks. Byleth gasps. Edelgard's voice overlaps with a few other familiar ones. One deep voice that sounds strikingly similar to Thales. And a raspier timbre that she will never forget belonging to Epimenides. The blend of their voices make Edelgard sound more demonic than her already monstrous form. It's enough to make a shiver go down her spine. What's happening? Shay fans the dust away from him, also just noticing the beast before them. It is time to end you once and for all. Edelgard, Thales, Epimenides, all blending in together as one demonic being. They laugh maniacally, blasting a dark spell towards their way. The group all jumps in separate directions, evading the attack. But the spell is so large that debris flies everywhere, with some pieces managing to graze Byleth's arm. The barriers have weakened drastically. Suthes explains. Time is melding into itself. The darkness is taking shape and joining as one. She's too dangerous. Byleth yells. I will handle her from here. What? Are you crazy? Shay blurts out. We all have to get out. Shay, she looks at him for a moment with her sincere gaze. Trust me. Shay purses his lips, conflicted. But eventually, he nods ever so hesitantly. Everyone. Clear out. The hegemon laughs again, its cackle sounding more so like Epimenides. Finally. I can take you down for myself. You are mine, and mine alone. Byleth glares, snarling at the beast head on. So the moment has come. Are you certain that you want to do this, child? Suthes says. You have made it clear, Suthes. Byleth grunts, tightening her grip around her sword. This must be done. For it does not matter what she wants. She blasts another spell her direction, and Byleth rolls out of the way. She runs around the hegemon, slashing her sword in its back, where she is the most open. Ever so often, she jumps out of the way, running around again, finding openings wherever she can. The hegemon tries to claw her down with her black vine-like fingers, but Byleth blocks her attack with her sword. She leaps away, catching her breath. Byleth. She looks back and sees the Dimitri of this world rushing her way. Watch out! He barks, pushing her out of the way for yet another spell. Byleth gets up on her feet, readying her sword. But Dimitri grabs a hold of her wrist. It's too dangerous. He warns. You have to leave. Now. I can't. She retorts, breaking free of his grip and charging toward the hegemon. It tries to counter-attack, but Dimitri protects her with his Eridbar. Enough. He yells in alarm. You have to flee immediately. This is not your battle to fight. Byleth inhales sharply. Why? Why does he always try to stop her? Another spell heads their way, which Dimitri deflects once again. The hegemon screams at him, interweaving with Edelgard's mellow and Thal's gravelly voices. I am tired of scum like you getting in my way. Byleth narrows her gaze. This is it. The hegemon forms a black hole with her viney hands. The same spell that dragged here in the first place. And it will be the same spell that will end it all. Dimitri grabs her again, attempting to pull her out of the way, but she does not budge. Byleth. His voice is impatient now. She closes her eyes, taking a deep breath. Then she opens them again, resolve settling in the pit of her stomach. Dimitri, listen to me. She places a hand on his face, making him look at her. None of this is your fault. I will never be another voice in your head, do you understand? What are you doing? His face grows more anxious the more she speaks. She smiles at him, hoping it can give him some kind of comfort. For this truly is the last time, isn't it? No matter what world. No matter what timeline. A tear rolls down her cheek again, as she faces her love for the very last time. It will always be you. Edelgard charges the black hole at her. Dimitri screams her name, his hands unable to hold on to her as he tries to bring her back to him. You will not win, Suthies. The hegemon screams. She runs toward the spell, acceptance growing in each of her footsteps. Her job as a tool is almost at its end. Suthies, give me strength. We shall seal the barriers once and for all. Before it can hit her, she activates the divine pulse. The world shatters around her as she brings herself to the unknown, swallowing the darkness along with her. Chapter 29. Dimitri stays in place, dumbfounded. The black hole in front of him closes up, as if it never appeared in the first place. His ears ring at the silence of it all. Dimitri. Shay yells. Are you okay? He remains unresponsive, staring at where the black hole was. He could barely take in anything. One moment, he had slain Thales. The next, Byleth came storming up the church, and Edelgard destroyed the building with her monstrous form. And before he can process anything, Byleth bid him goodbye and disappeared before him, vanishing into thin air as she got sucked into the warp, dragging the monster along with her. Now, she's gone. Whether she simply disappeared or died is something that he cannot answer. That makes him break into a cold sweat, lips turning as dry as sand. The storm still persists, and soldiers scream around him. But the chaos does nothing to drag him out of his daze. No matter what world, no matter what timeline, it will always be you. His heart pounds loudly as he reflects on her words, replaying the memory of her disappearing in front of him yet again. Byleth. A voice very similar to his roars from behind him. Dimitri turns around to see his counterpart rushing frantically. His hair is in disarray, and he breathes heavily. His stride is long and rushed, almost dashing past him as if he was running for his life. The man stops before him, eye frenzied. Where is she? He bellows. But Dimitri can only gawk at him like a deer in headlights. He grabs him by the collar now. Where is she? He shakes him harshly. Answer me. Hey. Enough. Shay breaks them apart. But his counterpart's grip on him is tight. The longer Dimitri stays silent, the more it seems to anger him. You let her go. He growls. Damn you. Why didn't you stop her? Easy there. Shay remains in the middle of the two, struggling to push the men twice his size apart. He did try to stop her, I saw it happen. Shay looks him in the eye. But she still left. She's gone. The man's face shatters completely. No, he whimpers before his voice grows in volume, yelling in agony. No. He throws his lance violently on the ground, violently enough that it makes his crest flare and the ground break from the lance's impact. Why, beloved? He clutches his hair in distraught. Why? We'll find a way, Shay insists. We just have to keep calm. Don't tell me to calm down. He roars. You're not the one losing someone you love. His counterpart chuckles darkly now, shaking his head. I don't think I've ever been angry at her in my entire life. Not once. Until now. His smile is broken, and he grits his teeth hard as he speaks. She's too reckless. Always thinking of others instead of herself. Always believing that she's a tool, because that's what everyone thinks of her. She never thinks about how it hurts her. She's so. His counterpart roars again. Frustrating. Dimitri. Shay. Claude calls out. Are you all right? Claude's voice stops in his tracks from the sight before him. His eyes enlarge at the sight of the two Dimitris standing next to each other. Whoa, am I hallucinating? Lady Rhea follows right next to him, caught off guard as well. It does not take her long, however, until she fits the pieces together. His Majesty, then her eyes move to the other. And you must be from another world. Another world? Claude sputters. Lady Rhea looks up at the sky, which still storms with purple. That explains it all. Her breath hitches. Then that girl, she was the vessel of the progenitor god. Byleth. His counterpart growls, glaring at Lady Rhea. She has a name. Lady Rhea stares at him. I see. Byleth. She steps towards them with eagerness. She must have come to this world to save us. Her words seem to anger his counterpart. Enough. Just because she has a divine power does not make her a martyr based on your wishes. He stands in front of Lady Rhea. She came here on accident. Do you hear me? Because of you. Lady Rhea gapes, stunned. She never meant to come here. He continues. If you didn't send her on a mission all by herself, if you just stopped manipulating her, she would have remained safe and none of this would have happened. But you made her put her life on the line again. Sacrificing her life to save all of us for the wrong reasons, because she thinks her life is meaningless. His voice booms in the open space, almost as loud as the thunder above them. She is going to die. Don't any of you understand? Why are all of you just standing here? To die. Those words make Dimitri's heart stop. She is going to die. All because she risked her life to save them. I don't understand. Dimitri murmurs. Why would she do that? He looks at his counterpart now, his voice matching his volume. Why would she risk her life to do that? His counterpart grits his teeth, barking at him. Because she loves us. Dimitri's body turns cold. She loves him? That should be impossible. A beast like him, how on earth did she grow to love him? Why him? You're lying. He whispers. Byleth flickers across his mind. Her gentle smile as she gave him the silver band before he left for this final battle. And the same smile she braced him with before she disappeared out of his life completely. The blood in his veins pump rapidly, boiling in anger. You're lying. He yells as if it can ease the pain in his heart. Why would she love me or you? We're beasts. Nothing more. The voices in his head grow louder, agreeing with him. Mocking him for even imagining the concept of love. Reminding him of what he does not deserve. What he is not able to feel. His body trembles furiously as he releases a laugh. A hysterical, twisted laugh that takes the air from his lungs. We will never be able to love. Dimitri laughs at him for even suggesting such an idea. She's a fool for ever sacrificing her life to save us. His counterpart punches him in the face before he can even say another word, tossing him to the ground. Dimitri. Claude and Shay gasp. Your Majesty. Lady Rhea shrieks. His counterpart's knuckles turn white as he keeps an iron grip around Dimitri's collar, glaring daggers with his soul eye. Do not ever speak of her in such a way. He hisses. Ever again. We did enough of that, do you hear me? Do not project your own self-hatred and failure towards her. Dmitri falls speechless, as if he had gotten punched yet again. Bottle up your guilt all you want. His counterpart taunts. But this cycle of blame will only go round and round. The more we let our burdens take a hold of ourselves, the more we let others suffer, and the more they drag down with us. Slowly, he lets go, standing up back on his feet. Dmitri remains shell-shocked on the ground as he rubs his cheek from the impact of his punch. Do you know how many times I treated her in the way you spoke of her just now? His counterpart's voice becomes soft and reflective. Too many to count. Days became weeks. Weeks became moons. But my attitude never changed. I only thought of my own failures and the remaining people I had to slay. Anybody who stood in my way were only part of the problem. I insulted her. Mocked her. Even to the point of comparing her to the likes of me. I stooped as low as spitting her grievances of her loved ones to her face. Her father. Me. His eyes turned downcast. Blaming yourself will inevitably hurt those around you. By the time you see clearly and step out of your demons, the damage you created cannot be reversed. Despite how much you try to redeem yourself. He clenches his fists. But I will be damned if I do not keep trying. I do not care if I have to fight tooth and nail in the depths of hell. I will save her. This cycle of self-hatred and guilt must be stopped. This is not the world we fought so hard to create. The world we fought so hard to live in. Despite how the man's face is contorted in despair, he stands tall in his unwavering resolve and steeled conviction. And that's when it hits him. How he sees it all clearly now. For even though they look the same, there is only one beast between the two. And it is not the man who stands before him, scarred and beaten down by war and suffering. It is not the man who roars like a lion in agony. No, it is himself. He, who despite being able to stand with his allies and has the miracle of all of them surviving on the other side, who despite looking unscathed by the atrocities of war, is still haunted by the ghosts of his past ever so loudly. Laughing at him every night, waking him up from any sort of peace. It is not the man that stands before him, as he has allowed himself to release all of his pain, unafraid of the ugliness and messiness of it all. It is himself, who suppresses it all due to his cowardice. The Dmitri before him has decided to live in peace for the world he has created. Whereas Dmitri himself only wishes for a grave to rest, for peace will never find him until he can find his eternal slumber. Dmitri sits alone on the cold, hard ground, acknowledging this fact. How? A tear rolls down Dmitri's cheek. How did you become like this? The man stares at him with a sympathy that Dmitri never thought he was able to show. You must forgive yourself. He answers. Dmitri's body quivers at the words, using all his might to suppress the tears that are stuck in his throat. Forgive. He never knew that he needed to hear those words. That it would shake a deep part of his heart. Out of everybody, he never knew that a man just like him would be the one offering forgiveness. Offering redemption. Just what kind of dream is he living in right now? Before they can speak more, footsteps approach their direction. Your Majesty, IES. Everyone turns to Sylvain, who heads their way along with Rodrigue and the Blue Lions. What are you still doing here? Sylvain asks, looking at Dmitri's counterpart. Where's Byleth? She disappeared. Shay says. Where to, I can't say. To seal the barriers of space and time. His counterpart grunts, frustration washing over him once more. Yes, Lady Rhea nods. She has headed to the astral planes. In the heart of the goddess existence. She looks up at the purple sky. She has brought the culmination of the universe's darkness altogether. It will be a matter of time until the world will return to normal and she seals them away for good. You have to bring me to her. His counterpart orders her. You were the one who sent me here. I'm sure you can bring me there too. And why will I do that? Lady Rhea challenges, albeit empathetically. She is the only one who can seal the barriers and restore balance. There has to be another way. I'm afraid not. She is the only one who holds one existence across all universes as the vessel of the goddess. We can't just let her die. Not like this. She frowns. I am sorry. His counterpart turns away abruptly, scratching his head irritatedly. One existence, One vessel, Shay says, breaking the tense silence. Dimitri notices how Shay looks deep in thought. What's wrong, Shay? His friend peers at him. This may be a long shot. But, does it have to be the vessel of the goddess? He catches everybody's attention now. What do you mean? Shay looks at the other Dimitri. You said that you never met me. You didn't know who I was until now. I did. Well, what if I also had one existence? The silence amongst the group thickens as Shay continues to speak. I was a vessel too. I don't know if I am anymore, now that Arvel's gone. But I still have my powers. And they aren't something that you just come across in a book of reason. That's gotta mean something, right? Everybody exchanges looks. You might be correct. Lady Rhea agrees. Epimenides is a being parallel to the goddess herself. He too lives in the dimension of time and space, just like the goddess does, despite how their functions differ in maintaining these domains. So what are you saying? Claude asks. Are you volunteering to become the seal? I don't see why not. Shay shrugs. What are you talking about? Dimitri gasps. Shay, you could lose your life. Shay grins, and Dimitri cannot help but be astonished by how there is no sign of fear on his friend's face. I told you many times before. Death is just part of the mercenary business. Shay says. This isn't something to take lightly. Dimitri argues. I'm being serious. Shay scowls now, letting out a sigh. I won't joke at a time like this. I can't let you sacrifice your life. You can't just throw it away like it's nothing. I'm not sacrificing myself because I think my life is meaningless or any of that. Shay interrupts. I'm doing it because I know it has meaning. He lets out a smile. Protecting my friends. Not such a bad purpose to have in life, right? But still, Dimitri frowns. Besides, we don't know what's gonna happen. Shay says. For all we know, I can be terribly wrong about this entire thing. But if I'm right, who's to say I won't survive? We'll never know unless we try. He grins again. Better to bet on the best than just let a friend of ours die, right? Shay looks at the blue lions. What do you guys say? You with me? This is like a death sentence. Ash frowns. I agree. Dida nods. This is far too dangerous. Before more of them can protest, Sylvain is the first to say anything different. I'm just thinking about our lives. Sylvain says. Well, not our lives. But the lives of our other selves back in the other world. He looks at the Dimitri of that other world. You said she's the queen of Faerghus, right? Maybe I won't be making any sense, but I feel like I owe her my duty or something. As the next Margrave. And I'm sure the kingdom will be very worried for her. Mercedes agrees. Considering that she is their queen, they must hold her very dear to them. It feels wrong to just let her die. Annette adds. I mean, she's not just the queen, but she's also our friend. Now that you put it that way, Ash murmurs. And she has protected so many of our lives. Ingrid remarks. Why should it be any different for us? Felix scoffs. You are thinking about versions of us that we do not even know. Why should we defend them? Felix, the other His Majesty is standing right there. Sylvain wags a finger at Dimitri's other self. You'd think that's enough reason. He's not our Majesty. But he's His Majesty nonetheless. Sylvain sighs. Another world or not, why should our loyalty be any different? It's still the kingdom with the same people. With the same king. If you think about it, doesn't that just make our responsibility bigger than we thought? It's not just the people of our world that needs protecting anymore. Everyone gapes at the man's words. Sylvain, I never knew you could speak so eloquently. Ash says. Sylvain winces, rubbing the back of his neck. Ah, now you're just making me regret saying anything. No, but your words do ring true. Dida says, who looks at the two kings. I swore to myself that I will always protect you, your Majesty. And I will not waver in my loyalty, no matter the world you come from. He bows before them. I swear my life to you. Didu, both of them gasp. Felix scoffs. This is quite the stretch. But, it is not an unreasonable notion. He's right. Asha's face becomes resolved. What kind of knight am I if I am to pledge my loyalty to one but betray the other? Me too. Ingrid chimes in. The rest of the Blue Lions start to murmur in agreement of Shay's proposal, making the mercenary smile triumphantly. This is indeed a complicated situation. Rodrigue adds on, sighing softly. Frankly, I do not know what consequences this will entail. This is a very big gamble. However, knowing that the kingdom has emerged victorious here in this world, and is also prospering in the other, he looks confidently at the two kings now. I have faith in whatever the both of you decide to do. In the end, this should all be up to you. Dimitri gulps, facing the pressure of the decision. I don't know. He looks at his other self. But in contrast to his own conflict, the man's gaze hardens with determination. We have burdened her for far too long, he says. She has saved us from the brink of darkness countless times. Now, she needs us. It is our turn to show her the light. He steps forward. So what shall it be? What will you live for? He extends his hand, and Dimitri can only stare at it. Byleth flashes through his mind. On the countless times she protected the Blue Lions when she sided with the Empire and when she turned against it. On the countless times she showed her trust in him and his leadership without any trace of doubt. On the countless times she smiled at him and believed in him unconditionally, despite how undeserving it all is. No matter what world, no matter what timeline, it will always be you. A newfound wave of resolve and adrenaline rushes through him. He grunts, taking the man's hand firmly, forming a promised allegiance with himself. Shay smirks. Looks like the real battle's only beginning. If this is what your decision will be, I only pray that the goddess will give you strength. Lady Rhea takes a breath as she walks past them, waving them away. I will open a portal for the three of you and protect your souls whilst you are in the goddess domain. However, tread carefully, she warns. A human cannot stay in for too long. If your body is unable to handle the domain long enough for you to retrieve her, we won't let it come to that. Shay nods, fired up. Lady Rhea nods. She presses her palms to the ground and suddenly, her eyes glow green as she summons a circle before her. A bright light beams from it, cracking through the ground. The three men look at the portal before them. Before they step in, they take one final look at their friends behind them. Good luck. Claude smirks. Be careful out there. You got this, Shay. Your Majesties. Ash cheers. Get her back safely, Annette says. They all chant their final words of encouragement. Dimitri's eyes then land on Rodrigue, who smiles at him, giving him an encouraging nod. For some reason, he feels as if it's goodbye. But before Dimitri can dwell on it any further, Shay already takes the first step. Come on, Shay urges. We don't have much time to lose. He is the first to run through it. Dimitri and his counterpart stand there for a moment, exchanging looks. For the first time, it is as if Dimitri sees a mirror of his own reflection in the man. A reflection of his gaze that is filled with courage. A motivation to live. It is what allows him to take the step and enter the portal with him. Because for once, he decides to choose another way of living. For once, he will choose his happiness. For once, he will choose love. Chapter 30. They enter a vast world under the starriest sky they have ever seen. Underneath their feet are wisps of green and purple that light a path before them. Whoa, Shay gasps. This place, it almost looks like the one we were in when we battled Epimenides. Perhaps you are right. His other self agrees. And these are quite familiar as well, Dimitri says as he stares at the wisps. Let us follow the path before us. It must lead to her. More wisps light up the further they walk down the path. The only sound they hear are their footsteps against the ground. Their senses heighten, cautious for any sudden ambushes. When they reach at the deeper end, they start to see something. What is that? His other self asks. Dimitri squints his eye to take a closer look. That looks familiar. In front of them lays a throne of green limestone. One that looks similar to the one that rests in the holy tomb at Gareg Mach. This is indeed the domain of the goddess. Dimitri tells them. I never knew for it to be so empty. Suddenly, Shay yells in pain, collapsing to the ground. Shay. His other self is the first to rush over to the man. A green glow starts to encase Shay like a rope, binding him from his feet all the way up to his neck. What's going on? This spell. It is the same one that bound Nemesis. Dimitri readies his lance in alarm. Somebody is here. You traitorous humans. A voice booms in the darkness. Why did you bring this wretch to my domain? Something shimmers on the throne, gradually revealing the outline of a human figure. A young girl forms. She wears a crown on her head, whereas her green hair falls to her knees, tied in pink and white ribbons. Her purple gown drapes over the steps that lead up to the throne elegantly like royalty. Her emerald eyes are filled with rage. It is your doing that the universe is nearing its end. She seethes. Perhaps I should end you here and now. No, stop. His other self rushes over, hands raised in plea. But the girl glares at him now. She extends her hand, and suddenly, his other self gets encased by the same spell as well. Before Dimitri can react, a glowing rope also starts to wrap around him. What is happening? Dimitri sputters as he feels himself getting lifted off the ground against his own will. The girl waves her hand inwards, pulling him and his other self towards her, while Shay is left writhing on the floor behind them. The strong, Suthis scowls at his other self. Then her eyes move to Dimitri. And the mighty. Two sides of the same blade. Have you come to offer him as your sacrifice and repent for your sins? Or have you come to further destroy the barriers of time? What are you talking about? His other self flails about. Who are you? She stares him down. Suthis is my name, yet I am also called the beginning. I am progenitor and mother to all who call Fodlan home. Suthis, her name dawns on Dimitri. Then you must know where Byleth is. So it is your beloved you seek. She replies. Your beloved, who you sought to kill as a beast of war. What? Dimitri grows horrified. And your ally, she looks back at his other self. Who you abandoned for a marriage of power. Dimitri looks at his other self in shock, who only gulps at the accusation. And so do you wish for the further suffering of my vessel? Suthis scowls. Her thoughts and mine have been one. I hear of her anguish and sorrow. Despite it all, I have tried to stow her away from the path of becoming the seal, yet you humans have forced my hand. Perhaps she is not a fool after all to give up on humanity, now that I see where your loyalty truly lies. Her eyes past them, looking now at Shay, who still struggles helplessly on the ground. She clenches her free hand, which tightens the rope around the man, making him yell in agony. Stop. His other self struggles some more. We are not here to hurt you. We are here to save her. That's right. Dimitri adds. We have come to bring her back to safety. Safety? Suthis gasps in disbelief, chuckling darkly. You know not about what you babble about. The world is not safe anymore. It threatens to collapse within itself. And it is too late to bring her back. Shay cuts their argument with a loud cry. No. It's not. The corner of his eyes are pricked with tears from the pain. I have come, he pants shakily. To take her place. This renders Suthis in a state of shock as the binding around them loosens. She moves past the two Dimitris, walking down the steps until she reaches Shay. You, Suthis says lowly. What reason do you have? Shay swallows dryly, still panting from the tightness of the rope around him. She's my friend. You wish to become the seal? He nods weakly. Finally, the glow around them disappears and Dimitri lands clumsily on his feet. Shay gasps deeply for air. Suthis scoffs, walking away from them. Nonsense. Only the goddess can perform such an act. She looks down, her voice revealing a hint of sadness. That is our duty. And even so, it is too late now. She has already entered the void and taken the darkness with her. It is only a matter of time until she is swallowed whole, and the barriers are completely repaired. Goddess, please. Dimitri begs, getting down on one knee. We must save her. If there is still a sliver of time that can be granted to us, we have to take it. And if this whelp betrays you... She shoots daggers at the purple-haired man. Do not dare think of me as a fool. I hold the power of the universe and can end you before you can as much as take a breath to beg for mercy. Then strike me down if it comes to that. Shay speaks with confidence. I know we've had a rough history, but I've come to help. Really. And I have reason to think that you care about her too. Staying in somebody's conscience the whole time they've pretty much been alive. Shay continues. You can't tell me you just view her as a vessel or as a body to protect. You speak as if you have personal experience. She narrows her glare. Shay shrugs. Kind of. She stares at him for a moment before letting out a defeated sigh. If I open the void and lead you there, what you see will not be easy. She looks between the three. In order to become the seal, one must absorb the darkness with them to restore the balance of time. One without a resilient heart will be corrupted, and will ultimately die. The weight of it all makes the hairs on Dimitri's skin raise in fear. His blood grows cold at the mere thought of it. The voices inside him cackle. She's going to die. Glenn scolds. Because of you. Yet more blood on your hands. Lambert taunts. Everything you love, you destroy. But a hand is placed firmly on his shoulder, snapping him out of his thoughts. His eyes meet Shay, who glances between Dimitri, and also his other self, who seems to mirror the fearful expression on his blanched face. Guys, it will be all right. Shay reassures before looking back at the goddess. Let's take her out of there before it is too late. Dimitri nods and evens out his breathing. Now is not the time to spiral in despair. Suthies remains impassive as she stares back at the endless horizon of her domain. I will not be able to help you, as this is not my real, physical form. I have used the remnants of my power to guard my domain, as most of it is used to merge with my vessel completely to form the seal. She extends her hand out. Now, this is left in your hands. If your mission fails, you will have no choice to let go and accept your fate. Their surroundings turn windy, and Dimitri shields his face from the gust that blows against his face. Then, when it stills, the sky is gone. Everything around them is a blinding white filled with nothingness. Dimitri looks around him. Suthies has disappeared, leaving only the three men alone in the void. A vortex now appears in front of them. It is coming. I have brought her to you. She warns. The beginning of the end. A dark figure steps out of the vortex, ashen like a shadow. Behold, the monster that has taken the shape of the darkness. Her posture, her body. Dimitri recognizes her in a heartbeat. Beloved. But she does not respond. Her eyes do not shine with her usual emerald green, but with an ominous white that stares past his soul. His other self's eyes widen, mortified. Byleth. This is the reason for everything. From the failure of time to the prevalence of the darkness. This was born, from all of you. Without a beat, Byleth casts a sword from the shadows and strikes a blow their way. Her slash is so strong, demolishing the ground beneath them. Dimitri evades the debris that heads his way, but Byleth moves quickly to strike her sword at him. He blocks it with his lance. Beloved. It's me, Dimitri. She does not listen, slashing up her sword immediately after her first attack, which he blocks again on time. But now, Byleth begins to form a spell in her hands, directing it at him in point-blank range. Dimitri. Shay pushes him out of the way before the fire spell can blast him in the face. They land roughly on the ground. When he pushes himself up, Byleth runs toward their direction again. Before she lifts up her sword, his other self cuts in between them, striking his lance down at the ground, causing her to fly away. His other self helps lift the two back up. Are you okay? He asks. Yeah. Shay nods, looking at Byleth from afar, who is already getting back up on her feet. Listen, there's no use talking sense into her for now. Shay grimaces. We have to weaken her a bit first. He eyes the two kings' evident discomfort incredulously. Look, I know she's your guy's wife. I mean, your wife, but if all we do is block her, we're never gonna save her. He's right. His other self says, though his face shows no sign of pleasure. We must at least disarm her if we can. Dmitri grunts, tightening the grip on his lance with trembling hands. I never fought her before, he murmurs. Shay and his other self exchange looks. Well, we have. Shay says. She won't go down just with a single hit. She'll be fine. Trust me. The man draws his sword and casts one out of thin air with his free hand. Let's tire her out first. Shay is the first to clash swords with her, having the least amount of hesitance. Then, his other self, slowly, but determinedly, makes the next move. Dmitri watches as the two fight against her. He does not know if her current state empowers or hinders her, but she dodges their attacks with ease. He steels his nerves, catching up to the fight. As soon as he sees an opening, he lets out a battle cry as he hits the ground. The back of his lance pushes her away and she falls to the ground again. The three run toward her, but it is as if she surges with power as she roars in rage. She roars like a demonic beast, with no trace of humanity inside her. A tear falls from Dmitri's face. How it pains him to see her like this. She snarls, and all of a sudden, she emits a ball of darkness from her hands and aims it at them. They all jump out of the way in time. How is she doing that? Shay asks. I've never seen her use dark magic. It must be the darkness doing. His other self says, readying his stance again. If she merged with that monstrous hegemon from before, it's likely that she has consumed their powers as well. Dmitri finishes. Shay grunts. Gah. She's already strong enough as is. She blasts the ball of Nosferatu again, screeching as she does so. They evade the attack on time, shielding themselves from the debris of the impact. Dmitri. Shay calls. Yes. Both Dmitris answer in unison. The two of them exchange looks. Shay gapes at them. Sorry, I mean your majesty. They look at each other again. Bladdid. This is hard to keep track of now. His other self shakes his head. The one with both his eyes. Now, that's just dehumanizing. Dmitri frowns. Shay groans. You know what I mean. Just you take the rear, while the other distract her up front. I'll try to close the gap. They do as he says, circling around her as they keep her occupied with blasting her spells at them. Her roars become more and more frustrated as she continues to miss. However, her movement becomes sluggish, as if the dark spells have taken a toll on her now. This is our chance. Shay gets closer to her now, striking her from behind. She roars in pain, spinning abruptly at him, now using her sword to fight. Come on, snap out of it. Shay says, as the two counter-attack each other. This isn't you. She only snarls, the strikes of her sword growing in strength. Remember who you are. Shay yells. Remember the Blue Lions. Your father, Geralt. Remember Dmitri. She stops mid-swing, as if the names got through to her. Remember Dash. Byleth now hisses in anger, swinging her sword mindlessly once more. Shay steps away before the tip of her blade can hit him. Byleth. His other self steps in now, blocking her attack. You need to stop listening to whatever voices are overtaking your mind. She strikes again, and he blocks. You once said that your existence has always been meaningless. He continues, ignoring how she relentlessly attacks him. But Byleth, none of that is true. You do have meaning. Byleth stops again, lips quivering ever so slightly. Then, it is as if her personality shifts. 1 second, she screams in pain, and the next, she lets out a laugh. Oh, Byleth speaks. But her voice overlaps with another. One that sounds eerily similar to Edelgard's voice. Her posture becomes rather leader-like, straight, and poised like an emperor. Don't you want to kill me? Byleth stretches out her arms. Come, claim your victory. The war must end. His other self freezes in place. Then Byleth turns to Dmitri. And you beat me once. Why don't you do it again? The voices intertwine together menacingly. You can taste your revenge once more. Kill me. I stand right in front of you. Dimitri's face contorts in pain. He doesn't care if it's a death wish, but he holds her, looking into the emptiness of her eyes as she laughs. "Beloved," he says gently. "We are here to bring you home." Her smile falls. Home. Her eyes miraculously flicker between its glowing white and her emerald green, as if her real self is starting to seep through. But it is only for a brief moment until she is overtaken by the darkness again, her grin becoming sinister again. "You wish to return me home?" she spits. It is Thal's voice that becomes more prominent now. "Yes. Let the Agar dance live. We shall seize our victory. The darkness will prevail." She cackles in her mixture of voices, casting another dark spell that Dimitri blocks with his lance. "Byleth, stop!" Shay yells. She spins rapidly, striking her sword at the three of them at once. "Get away!" she yells. Suddenly, she chokes, clutching her head again. "You wretch!" she screams. Another voice booms louder than the rest. "Why do you resist?" "Epimenides!" Shay gasps, readying his sword. Through her struggle, Byleth looks at him with her lifeless gaze. "My vessel, you dare betray me once again." Her movement becomes erratic, making her strikes sloppier. "You!" she hisses. "What gain do you have in saving her? What is in it for you?" "Me." Shay smirks. "I get to beat the Ashen Demon. Once and for all." He manages a hit on her, and she roars, touching the slash on her torso where he struck. She growls furiously, ready to summon another ball of darkness. But the spell flickers weakly in her hands. She gasps again, her hands moving to her throbbing head. Dimitri uses this chance to rush over to her, grabbing her by her wrists to restrain her. "Beloved, you're in there," he says, gazing intensely at her. "I know you are. You must fight them. Come back to us." Her eyes flicker once again from green to white. "That's it," he whispers. "Come back. I know you can." It flickers more rapidly now. Before he can raise his hopes, she shakes her head as if she rejects his encouragement. "No." Her voice turns into a screech. "No." Her palms face forward, blasting a spell directly to his chest, making him fly backwards. He groans, clutching the side of his ribs. He blinks hard, clearing his vision. To his surprise, he sees Byleth running away from them now. Shay is the first to come to his senses, pointing at the vortex on the other side. She's trying to go back to the void. Dimitri immediately gets on his feet, his adrenaline pushing him to catch up to her. He barely makes it, caging her in his arms before she can fully step back into the vortex. "Byleth, stop!" Dimitri makes a beeline to her, caging her in his arms. "Let go!" Byleth desperately tries to claw out of his arms, her hand struggling to reach the vortex. Dimitri roars out his frustration, pulling her out of the vortex that tries to suck her back in. "Let go of me!" Byleth shrieks. His footing becomes imbalanced, as he gets pulled in with her. But he feels a pair of arms wrap around him, anchoring his stance. When he looks behind him, he sees his other self and Shay desperately trying to pull him back. Another wave of determination overcomes him as his crest begins to flare up, bringing him a newfound strength. "No!" Byleth screeches, the voices interweaving indecipherably. "Why are you going to great lengths to retrieve her, me? You don't have to do this!" Dimitri yells, tightening his hold around her. "Come on!" Shay grunts. "Leave me alone!" Byleth's breathing becomes ragged in anger. "I said leave me alone!" In her rage, the darkness within her combusts, throwing them back. The white space turns jet black as the darkness paints on it like a blank canvas, turning into a world without the sun and where men become blind. "Beloved!" Dimitri's voice echoes down the abyss. He scans around wildly, but there is no sign of her. "Beloved!" He runs around aimlessly in the dark. "Shay!" "Dimitri!" Nobody responds except for a laugh that comes from behind him. "That kid's a demon. She'll help us win tons of gold in no time." When he turns around, he sees a group of faceless people towering over him with a menacing grin. But they do not do anything in his presence. They only continue to talk, as if he does not exist. A vision, he figures. None of this is real. He continues to scurry, calling her name out again and again. You are the only one who can become Archbishop and take my place. Another giant shadow hovers over him. One that looks similar to that of Rias. Do not be so selfish when I granted you the power of a god. Her voice bellows as her form enlarges with her anger. Are you the Archbishop first or the Queen? Dmitri runs through the shadow, as alarm rages through him. These illusions, no, they do not seem like illusions. They are almost like memories. Another shadow appears. Tell me, Your Majesty, this time, its voice sounds like that of Duke Karen. Did this conniving Archbishop persuade you to go against the ideologies of the kingdom? More silhouettes appear. Those rebellions are a product of the Queen's lies. It shouts. She has manipulated us in order to forward the Church's agenda. How can we trust her to reclaim the relics from us now? You think you are acting smart, but she will be our downfall. Just how many of our sacred traditions has she broken for her own sake? Dmitri runs through them, waving them away. Beloved. Do you not understand the ramifications in choosing her as your queen? Another one pops in front of him. She cannot bear an heir. What use will this woman have if she cannot do the only thing that is expected of her? He slashes through the shadow with his lance, scanning around frantically. Beloved. Where are you? A cackle echoes through the darkness. You already know. You failed them. A silhouette forms from the ground, boring into him with its crimson eyes. Time and time again, your efforts are fruitless. You only serve to worsen their burden. That is your duty as the progenitor god. Another one appears behind him. It is not the darkness that brings out the wickedness of humanity. It is you. Another. They do not suffer without you. They do not stray away from the kingdom without you. And another. You are not needed anymore. He roars, slashing through all the shadows at once. His blood begins to boil. Did somebody tell her this? All of these cruel things? Suddenly, Dmitri hears somebody weep in the darkness that makes his body turn to ice. Beloved. His scream is distraught as he resumes his sprint. From afar, he finally sees a glow. A faint, green glow that matches the shade of her hair. Beloved. He darts to her as fast as he can. But suddenly, another shadow forms from the ground. It keeps growing, being the biggest one that Dmitri encounters. And he freezes in his tracks when he sees who it looks like. If she is the one best suited for the role as queen, then I do not object to having her by my side. The shadow bellows. This shadow, it looks exactly like his other self. And when he looks back at the next one that appears, one that is as big as the other, this one looks exactly like him. If you stand in my way, I will strike you down. His shadow hisses. Dmitri is stunned into silence. He tries to move forward, but the shadow only pushes back, growing in size. The Dmitri you once knew is dead. The shadow bellows. All that remains is the repulsive, blood-stained monster you see before you. If you do not approve of what I have become, then kill me. Dmitri staggers backwards, the words hitting him in waves. Words he had uttered to her from a distant past. Words that he always carried him with regret. 5 years ago, did you not deem the woman who killed Geralt to be unforgivable? He spits. I am most certain that you did. You couldn't let her get away with her crime, so you took up your sword in pursuit. Precisely my point. We're the same, you and I. Tears prick the corner of his eye. All of these words, how foolish was he to utter them to her? He should have never spoken to her in such a way, not even when he was buried in his darkness. Not when even then, he had loved her so much. He tried so hard to run away from it all. He thought that if he forgot them, she would too. If he showered her with gratitude and encouragement, it could conceal the shame of his past actions better than apologies that he was so afraid to say ever could. But here, he sees just how the pain from many years ago still show through until now. Just like how his grief still carries with him. Pain created from those you love, he, out of all people, should know that can never be forgotten. That pain can never escape you, no matter how hard you try. Just like a scar in war, the wounds of the heart will never fully disappear. It becomes a part of you, and Dmitri was a fool to think otherwise. Instead of confronting it, of allowing his beloved to grieve, he was a coward and ran away from it all for so many years. How long has she tried to be strong for him? For everyone? When did she ever have a chance to be weak? When did he ever let her? He knows it is unforgivable. He knows that if he is to ever redeem himself, it will take his entire lifetime to do so. But he does not care how many lifetimes it will take. He is going to be there for her. For she needs him now more than ever. And he will be damned if he just abandons her in the middle of his self-pity. So, he trudges forward. Beloved. He ignores the numbing feeling that overtakes his body and moves past his fear and pain. Moves past the shadows that throw his mistakes back to his face. Those voices have taken control on him for far too long. Beloved. He runs, making way to her small form that still weeps on the ground. But when he makes his way closer, he sees somebody else. Instead of his wife, Dmitri finds a little girl bathed in the gentle, green glow. He walks over to her hesitantly. Byleth. He calls softly, reaching for her shoulder. The little girl turns to him with her tear-stricken face. He takes a breath as his heart tightens agonizingly. It is unmistakable with her round eyes and small face that this girl is a younger version of her. What happened to you? He asks, his eye becoming glazed with tears that mirror her own. She looks at him sadly, tears still streaming down her face as she sniffles uncontrollably. Who are you? Chapter 31. A man so familiar stands before her. He crouches down, tears brimming his eyes. What happened to you? He whispers. She sniffles. Who are you? His frown deepens. Do you not know? She shakes her head. But even so, she trembles with fear. For he looks like the shadow that screams at her. She cries again, curling into herself. I'm sorry. She says it like a reflex. It's all my fault. Her sobbing continues, but eventually, a warm hand comfortingly rubs her back. She peeks over her shoulder, and sees that the man's face shatters with sadness. You must have been hurting all this time. His voice comes out in cracks. Haven't you? She wipes her nose, surprised by his remorse and sorrow. And I am as much to blame as everybody else. He says. I am sorry, Byleth. I am so sorry. Byleth. She yelps when she looks at her arms glitching between her childlike hands to ones that are more scarred and matured. Byleth, she says the name on her lips. It sounds like one filled with history. And so many memories. Before she can ponder on it some more, the shadows hover around them, screaming at her with their menacing gaze. Her muscles tense up as she curls in herself, covering her ears tightly and squeezing her eyes shut. She feels a pair of arms wrap around her. He calls out that name again and lifts her up, bringing her small body against his chest as he rocks her gently on his lap. She can hear his heartbeat, slow and steady. She evens her breathing to the rhythm of his heart, and her muscles gradually relax. He strokes her hair. Think about something good. Something good. She flutters her eyes open, looking up at him. Yes. Do you remember anything? She shakes her head slightly, hands still over her ears to muffle out the screams. He thinks for a moment with a low hum that vibrates against his chest. For some reason, it comforts her. You like to eat. He starts. You eat a lot. I've never seen anyone devour as much food as you do. He continues on. You like animals. You always wake up earlier than me and set out in the morning to feed the stray in the kingdom. You've been doing so even when we were still at the monastery. You love fishing. The kingdom does not have many pleasant fishing spots, but every moon or so, we trek away from the kingdom a little, until we reach the nearest river. You'd catch enough fish for the chefs to feed the whole palace. His voice remains light-hearted, and slowly, it is as if the screams subside as she focuses on his stories. You also like flowers. Primroses, to be precise. Primroses. He nods with a gentle smile. You always liked their color. And how small and fragile they are. It is my favorite too. A memory appears in her mind faintly. Of somebody giving her a bundle of baby pink primroses. She remembers the warm sensation that flooded her chest. The wide smile that came across her face. And the calming feeling that overcomes her every time she looks at it. Her body glitches again as the memory starts to become absorbed in her mind, despite how blurry it all is. You enjoy having your tea every day, and invite whoever is available. I try to join you as much as I can. You always made sure to prepare your guest's favorite. She peers up at him, a new memory flickering through her mind. Chamomile. His eye widens. That's your favorite. She continues. Yes. It is. His smile seeps out a hint of relief. You were aware that I could not taste, so you tried to find a type of tea with a relaxing scent to help me sleep. You have always been attentive that way. Always so kind and helpful towards other people. All you ever want to do is to make sure everybody is happy. If there are any shadows that still scream at her, she does not hear them now when she sees that he is overwhelmed with emotions once more. She can't help but reach out all of a sudden to wipe away the tear that pricks from the corner of his eye. He holds her hand that is on his face. And when you are in pain, you still put it aside to heal the wounds of others. You don't allow yourself the chance to cry because of that. It may sound silly, but perhaps that's why you never did, even when you were born. You're too selfless, always looking after other people. Her hand glitches against his cheek, flickering with sparks of green and purple. It is as if the more she remembers, the more her body loses control. Memories stream one by one, particularly of the man in front of her. The man who complimented her after a fight with some bandits. The man who welcomed her with new friends. The man who always gave her flowers. The man who always encouraged her in whatever she does. The man who was there for her at her lowest, in times of her grief. Suddenly, he breaks his gaze away from her, looking in front of him. She sits up now to see what he's staring at. A path of green embers light up the darkness ever so softly. He stands up, essentially towering over her like a giant that she has to crane her neck to look up at him. He now wears an expression with a little more hope as he extends his hand to her. Come. He says. We must start walking. She nods meekly, taking his hand. They walk together in the dark. To where, she does not know. But she feels calm in its silence, from the absence of any screams to taunt her any longer. As she looks at how he leads her by the hand, another flood of memories return to her. It's familiar, somehow. She knows that she has held this hand a million times before. The sound of rain plays vividly in her mind. Then that of crowds cheering triumphantly. And then she remembers the woods. How this same hand comforted her when she felt the same kind of fear she's felt now. Guiding her to find some kind of hope. The memories come back with each ember they pass, with every step they take. And from each memory regained, it is as if the walls of darkness wash away, revealing the bright white beneath it. It's fading away, the man murmurs. The light shines on him as he leads her further and further away from the darkness. We must be near the way out. Dmitri says, letting out a sigh of relief. He looks back at her with a smile. There is nothing to be afraid of now. We're almost home. Despite his relief, why does she not feel the same? It is as if this has happened before. And that's when she remembers the darker memories. Of the father she grieved over. Of her fall down an endless abyss. Of reuniting with the man in front of her after she abandoned him and led him to a spiral of torment. Of failing her duties as archbishop. As queen. As mother and wife. And of abandoning him yet again, leading to this mess of space and time. Dmitri. She calls out, and his name spills out as naturally as breathing. His eye widens, smile falling at the sound of his name. Byleth. Her body must have grown back to normal now based on how stunned he has become. She feels taller too, as she does not have to look up too high anymore to meet his gaze. But she cannot match any sort of relieved emotion that he feels. For all she can dwell on is the deep pit in her stomach, filled with loneliness and the dreading acceptance of the end. Just go, Dmitri. She says. There is nothing left for you here. He remains silent for a moment. But to her surprise, his eye does not hold any of that same fear he had during their fight before she came to seal the barriers. Instead, it is steeled with resolve. So much so that it is her turn to tremble with unease. "No," he says, with a determination that matched his gaze. "Not without you. It is easier if you just forget about me. Live the life that you deserve." "Maybe," he says, gently taking her hands in his. "Maybe, it is easier. But I do not care how easy life can be if you are not in it. I want you, and I will always want you to be by my side. No matter how difficult it will be." She places her hands on his chest, as if wanting to push him away. "Why you can't say these things when none of this would have happened if you never met me? You all could be happier. That's all I want for all of you." "That's not true." She stares at him, but it is not him who speaks. Dmitri looks past her, and when she turns around, she sees Shay, and the Dmitri she has come to know in these past several months. They walk along a path of embers that intersect and find a way to theirs, and now the four of them join together. "I'm not happier, Byleth." The other Dmitri admits it, as if he has never confessed such a thing before. "But when I met you, it was not for a long time. Definitely not as long as the me in your own world, but, you have to know, of the lives you have touched while you were here. So many people you saved and protected for a war that you did not have to go through again. Yet you did it anyway. That is a debt I can never repay." He takes a deep breath, recollecting himself from his wavering voice. "You need to live, Byleth. You need to go home." But she shakes her head. "I can't. After everything." Dmitri takes her hand, cutting her off. He stares intensely at her with his deep blue eyes. "Byleth," Dmitri pauses for a long moment, as if he is tasting the words carefully before he speaks them. "You have to forgive yourself." Her body stills at the words, which hit her so profoundly that she holds her breath. "I never knew that I could." He looks at his alternate version as he says that. "I frankly still haven't come to terms with it myself. But looking at who I can be, who I could have been, what you do for others is unmistakable, Byleth. You see the good in others. And you give them hope to carry on. That is why I know, with all my heart, that out of all people, you deserve to do so too." She looks at him. Then at her husband. One she had failed. And another who kept her a distance away before she ever could. Yet both of them fought so hard and put themselves through all of this hardship. And for what? Why? Her eyes become watery as she looks at them. "Why are you trying so hard for me?" They look at her so sadly that all she wants to do is run away again. "Because living for what I believe in, that has always been you." She does not know if it is her husband who says it, or if it is the other Dmitri next to him. She can't tell. Not when she finds tears blurring her vision, overwhelmed by the swelling in her chest. The darkness vanishes completely, as if her tears wash away any of the evil in it left, releasing all the grief, all the anger, and all the pain until they dissipate together into the light. But before she can say anything else, the space around them starts to crumble. Not good. The barriers must be completely broken down by now. Shay interrupts their moment, scanning around. "You guys have to go." "Us?" Byleth asks, barely able to process anything. "What about you?" "I'll be fine." He grins, yet his eyes narrow with concentration as he turns back. "Just go dash." Suddenly, the ground below them starts to crack and they fall through the ground. "Beloved." "Byleth." "Shay." "Dmitri." The four scream each other's name, barely reaching each other before they fade into the light. Byleth finds herself floating alone in a realm different from where she previously stood. One that sparkles with dusts of gold. Dmitri, either Dmitris, are not with her anymore. They do not appear despite how many times she calls out for them. Goodness! The universe almost faced its doom. A voice says. "I am relieved you are unharmed, child." Finally, this chaotic, little squabble has come to an end. She sees Suthis before her now, floating across the golden stream of light with her legs crossed. Suthis smirks. "Do not be so surprised to see me, child. You do not have to worry. For you have survived." Byleth's eyes widen dumbfoundedly. You mean, the universe is restored? Suthies finishes her sentence. It is a miracle in itself. The darkness has been completely absorbed by the four of you, removing it of its existence without the need for a seal. How, I do not know. Even I could not fathom such a solution to be possible. And I do not know what this mystery entails. She stretches her arms, seeming rather nonchalant despite the concerning news. It matters not now. We simply have to wait and see. So this must be what it is like to be a mortal who has no foresight of the future. But, Byleth frowns. Are you okay with this? Suthies shoots her a look before she huffs. Do you know why I did not tell you that you carried the ability to become the seal? Byleth is not able to answer, so she continues. It is because I hear of your sorrow, child. Your desire to return with the one that you love. I am not that cruel to reclaim that from you. I, for one, can understand that. As long as I am the goddess, I can only afford to watch from afar. But you have the choice to stay close with humanity. Suthies smiles wistfully. Living in harmony with you, it has given me the chance to walk alongside you all once more. You have unburied my memories of my distant past, when I once lived with mortals before I had to hide myself away. Her gaze becomes soft. She displays a sort of sincerity that she rarely gives her. You are more than just a vessel. Suthies says with finality. Then a queen, or an archbishop, or even as a mercenary. You are worth more than what you can offer to the people. You deserve your peace too, child. Suthies. The goddess smiles with a familiar warmth. One that Byleth has seen her wear when they viewed each other as friends. As a part of each other. The old Suthies has returned, she realizes. Who treats her as a friend rather than a vessel. Suddenly, there is a searing sensation in her hair and in her chest. Byleth takes a breath, fiddling with her hair. She sees that it starts to lose its mint green, vanishing and darkening in color. I suppose this is truly, Suthies says, extending her arm out to her. Our final goodbye. Their hands reach for each other, and Byleth closes her eyes as she is bathed in the warmth of her power. Think about what you want from now on, child. Suddenly, she falls headfirst into the sky. But it is not the dreadful fall to an endless abyss. It is as if she is wrapped around the arms of the goddess, gently guiding her downwards. This time, there is no fear within her as she falls back to the world like a fell star. The sky explodes with a ring of light before it seals up the cracks forever, restoring back into its clear blue, cloudless color, with the sun shining brightly above them. Dimitri gasps, waking up from the wave of memories that overflow his mind. Images of the war pass his mind, but some conflict with each other. In one memory, he is arrested for the murder of his uncle. In another, he performs the execution in front of his people. In one memory, he remembers Byleth teaching him and the Blue Lions at the officers' academy. In another, he met her in the middle of the war. He is sure that he knows which one is real, as one is more vivid than the other. But it is as if he lived through all of them at the same time, all at once. He winces, rubbing his head that throbs painfully. He looks around and notices that he is back in Magdrid Way, where he had fought Nemesis. Even the bodies of the Agarthans still lie across the battlefield, blood still freshly pooling around their bodies. It looks like the Agarthans have truly been defeated. But he jolts up in alarm when he sees that it is not only the Agarthans who lay on the ground. Armies in blue and yellow join them, with one in particular popping out from the crowd. Didu! He yells, scrambling to his feet as he rushes over to his friend. Didu! He kneels beside him, shaking his friend who lays still. Didu! Wake up! To his relief, Didu groans, blinking his eyes open. Your Majesty! He calls out hoarsely. Didu! Dimitri breathes out in relief. You're awake. More groans can be heard across the battlefield. From the other side, he sees Claude sitting up. What happened? Claude asks groggily, scanning around sluggishly. Why does my head feel all weird? He spots Dimitri, and he shakes away any drowsiness he feels at the sight. Dimitri! You're back. Felix wakes up next. Then Mercedes. The rest of the blue lions and golden deer wake up one by one, all with the same look of confusion. Dimitri goes over to them one at a time, checking on their condition. But none of them seem injured or scathed by any means. In fact, they look more than all right. He walks over to Claude now. Claude. Everything all right? Claude only gapes at him. I guess, but... Dimitri, your eye. Dimitri places his hand over his right eye, where his eye patch should be. But instead, he feels his scar that traces above his eyelid all the way down to his cheekbone. Though, the strangest part of it all, is that he somehow sees with it. He did not notice within his shock, but it is as if the battlefield looks more vast than he remembers it to be. How could this be? Dimitri murmurs. But he shakes his head, deciding to dwell on it later. How did all of you end up unconscious like this? He asks. I don't know. Claude frowns. 1 minute we were just cleaning up the battlefield, the next thing you know, the sky was acting all weird and I blacked out. He rubs his head now, puzzled. Say, besides your eye, does your mind feel strange too? You feel it too? Dimitri's eyes widen. I dunno. It's like, 1 second, I was at Gareg Mach. And now, I'm back here, having defeated Nemesis. But I haven't been back in Gareg Mach ever since the war began. He clicks his tongue. Still, it feels real. A bit too real. Maybe, realization washes over Dimitri now. Maybe it's because it's real. He looks down at the ground, pondering. Could it be, that they merged worlds? And if so? It hits Dimitri now. Where is Byleth? Before Claude can answer, he's already rushing around the battlefield frantically. Beloved! He yells, passing through his armies. But there is no sign of her. Beloved! His heart paces rapidly, fear taking over his mind. What if she didn't make it? What if they saved the world too late and she's stuck in that despairing void? Beloved! His yells become more desperate. Look! He hears Annette gasp, pointing up at the sky. A shooting star. Dimitri halts in his tracks, staring up at the direction that she points at. But it does not look like a shooting star, nor does it flash in lightning speed. The strobe of green light draws in the clear, blue sky, falling rather gracefully as it descends down to the west of the battlefield. He can recognize that shade of green anywhere. Get your horses! Dimitri yells, rushing over to his steed. Follow the light. He is the first to get on his steed, uncaring about how many forces will come with him. There is no way he will leave her on her own again. He is going to be there before she falls. Byleth's eyes are closed, almost lulling to sleep as she feels the wind breezing on her face. She glides down the sky through the remnants of Suthi's magic. Her glow still envelops her, as if she is still embracing her in her fall. It is only when she hears someone yell her name does she open her eyes. Byleth. The sound is closer, and when she looks from above, she finds Dimitri leaping off of his horse, beelining toward her, as if he is chasing for a star. His arms are wide open as she approaches closer and closer to the earth. She shuts her eyes tight, prepared for the impact against the ground. But he catches her. They fall to the ground, but he engulfs her around him so tightly, shielding her from any pain she can receive from the impact. This time, instead of the cold nothingness, she lands in her husband's arms that have always brought her certainty and security. Unlike those many years ago when she fell down to an abyss that led to her 5-year slumber, unlike the time Epimenides made her let go of the edge, she receives a comfort that she is safe. That somebody is there to hold her. So, when she opens her eyes, and feels his tears drop on her face, she cannot help but let her own resurface and cry as well. Though this time, she does not cry as if she tries to keep herself composed. She does not weep silently, fighting for control. She cries as if a dam has broken, and her tears stream like waterfalls while she chokes out a loud, uncontrollable sob. Dimitri, she cries. He smiles through his tears, bringing her lips to meet his. My beloved, he says through his kisses, unbothered by how tear-stricken he has become. It's okay. You can cry now. You're safe. Dimitri, she sobs, holding his ears to keep him close, bringing his lips to hers once more. Think about what you want from now on, child. And as she sees the man she loves before her now, she is unafraid to finally accept her answer. I love you. She continues to weep. I love you. She repeats those 3 words over and over again, sobbing them out as if she keeps it within her, she will explode. She's said it a million times, but the way she says it now is so raw, so vulnerable, so unlike her usual self. So different from the I love yous she declares to him in their own privacy. She says it now as if she wants everyone to know. As if she wants everyone to hear of her unapologetic love for him. There is relief and a newfound bravery within her declaration of love. Of finally following what her heart wants. And that is to be with him, no matter how difficult or selfish that may be. She wants to love him without shame, without anybody having any power to hold it against her. She wants to wake up beside him every morning and soothe him from his nightmares when he goes to sleep. She wants to hold and cherish him for as long as he will let her. She wants to build a future with him. Perhaps it is unlike what either of them expect, but it does not matter. For it will always be him and the happiness that they share that she wants. He kisses her, as if he has always known. As if there has never been a need to question her love. And in his arms, he sends his message. For the two can be at peace, can finally be on the same page, to face whatever challenges there may be without grief and guilt holding them back. In their embrace, there is a promise. That they both can move on together, no matter how cruel the voices within the both of them can be. Because it will be better again. For they will be there to reassure one another. For they promised that they will always be by each other's side. And he says it to her again in the words he utters as he kisses her. No matter what world, no matter what timeline, he whispers. It will always be you. Chapter 32, Epilogue. Byleth waits quietly by the gate of the monastery for her carriage to arrive, accompanied by her longtime friend, Mercedes. They watch the bustle around the market, where merchants and customers haggle obnoxiously, and the children play games, uncaring of the business around them all. A group of kids runs up to her, with the one at the center holding out a garland of flowers. This is for you, your grace. He grins toothily. Her brows raise curiously. She bends down to meet their gaze. But I am not the archbishop anymore. You know this, right? Yeah, this is our gift goodbye. A younger and smaller girl chimes in. Please. Take it. We all made it for you. Byleth gives them a heartfelt smile. Very well. Thank you. They plop the garland over her head, one that is now empty of the archbishop crown that she used to wear around the monastery. Though, if she were to be honest, she prefers this headpiece much better. The children run away, waving her a bubbly farewell before resuming their game. My, they will surely miss you. Mercedes giggles. Byleth's gaze softens at the sight. So will I. It has been 9 months since she returned back to her real world. 9 months since she escaped her strange alternate universe experience. Ever since then, there was a lot of chaos to clean up, including the mass hysteria from the people throughout Fodlan. Nobles and common folk alike had muddled memories ever since their worlds collided, and it was no easy feat to guide them in sorting through it all. But there was a silver lining from it all. Through the melding of their worlds, those who slither in the dark seemed to have disappeared for good, with none of them left in sight. As a result, the Kingdom Council finally came to an agreement to reclaim all the relics back to Garag Mach's possession and seal them away for good. The Sword of the Creator, Eredbar, all of them are now out of their hands. Somehow, the melding of worlds even created improved relations between the nations, including those between the kingdom and Srang. It seems that the memories of Duskur commanders included of their alliance with the kingdom against the Empire, and found faith in Dimitri's leadership. Byleth made sure to take accountability for it all, despite Dimitri's protests. But she didn't do it out of self-punishment. Rather, she saw it as a form of redemption and healing. Despite her memories being unaffected, she cannot say the same about her body. Her hair has returned to her original ashen color, and strangest of all, her heart acts in ways that Byleth has never felt it do before. It beats against her chest, drumming disturbingly that for a while, it was difficult for Byleth to ignore it. There are times when it paces faster, like when she runs around the monastery or does some vigorous training. During those times, Byleth wonders if she has some kind of heartburn, and a fear creeps from behind her, wondering if it will beat to the point of agony, just like it did before she fell in the hands of Epimenides' domain. But then, even stranger is that she finds it pacing at that same, fast speed when she reunites with Dmitri after so long. But it does not feel painful like it did with Epimenides. No, there is a rush of peace that overwhelms her, comforting her body until her heart steadies when he brings her to his arms. She realizes then that it's no heartburn at all. In discovery of all of that, she finds her chance to find herself anew. And while she does so, she wants to help the people find their way again in this world and navigate through their newfound memories together. That, to her, allows herself to find peace. Have you finished saying your goodbyes? Seath walks over to them with his usual, polite smile. I have. Byleth says. Please, do send Lady Rhea my thanks once again. You have said it plenty enough. Seath chuckles lightly. Trust me when I say that your message is loud and clear. But we should be thanking you as well. Without your help, we wouldn't have claimed the relics back and sealed them once and for all. For that, we are eternally grateful. Besides, he smiles wistfully. I suppose it was always going to end up this way one or another. It was interesting how it all turned out. Byleth was ready to step in Lady Rhea's quarters after she returned to the monastery, and say her piece on revoking her role as archbishop. But to her surprise, Lady Rhea agreed without protest. She doesn't know if it was something that she already thought about for a while or if she decided it as soon as she saw that her hair lost color. Either way, it made sense. Byleth wasn't exactly the most passionate about church affairs. Lady Rhea had told her that Seath would take her place, and Byleth knows without a doubt that it was the best decision the church could have made. Byleth nods. It has always been more fitting for you to take over matters of the church. Despite how he tries to hide it, Byleth can read the prideful expression on the man's face. The regalia does not make me too stuffy looking, does it? Seath asks, examining his robe. Not more than you already look. Mercedes teases, catching the man by surprise. Mercedes. He gasps. An embarrassed blush takes over his face. You look fine, Seath. Byleth says. Though perhaps you can get rid of the headwear from time to time. It does weigh on you after a while. Seath fiddles with the golden band on his head, adjusting it slightly. A horse neighs, interrupting their light-hearted banter. Her carriage has arrived. Byleth takes a breath, looking back at them. I must be going now. I'll see you again in a few months. Mercedes is the first to hug her. Take care, Your Majesty. Please tell His Majesty I said hello. Of course. She smiles at her. Thank you for taking care of me while I'm here. You know how Dmitri can be. She giggles. He loves you a lot, there's nothing to be surprised about. She meets Seath's gaze now. He has his hand outstretched, as if he would do with a simple handshake. But Byleth ignores the formalities, bringing her friend and mentor into a hug. He grunts in surprise. Thank you, Seath. She says, stepping away now. His shock wears off, now being replaced with a smile. You're always welcome back, Byleth. It takes a few days until Byleth arrives at the kingdom, but to her, it felt like a few moons. She has been away from Dmitri for long periods of time, for long enough that her patience is practically non-existent. So as soon as she arrives by the palace gates and sees her husband waiting for her, she steps out of the carriage in haste, making a beeline for him. His face lights up as soon as he spots her. He runs over to her, arms already extended, to close the gap between them, and she leaps into his embrace. Careful, beloved. He laughs, lifting her off the ground securely. You're going to hurt yourself. I'm fine. She beams, gazing deeply into his eyes. Both of them, scarred and unscarred, are in full view, and it is a sight to behold every time she sees them. And there it is again. That strange thing her heart does when she reunites with him after so long. Pounding so fast in her chest, she feels like it could burst any minute. Even so, I do not want to take any chances with you, you know that. He says, gently putting her back on the ground. Especially now. Dmitri places his hand on her belly. She puts her hand over his, smiling at him reassuringly. It will be all right. Now that I'm here for good, I know that there's nothing I have to worry about. He exhales softly, tucking a hair behind her ear. Welcome home, beloved. He brings her inside the palace, away from the freezing winds of the kingdom into the warmth of the indoors. But instead of silence, she is greeted by the collective enthusiastic greetings of the Blue Lions. Look who's back. Sylvain grins. Welcome back, Your Majesty. Annette goes over to her, delightfully kissing her on both cheeks. It feels like forever. I hope you had a safe trip. Ash says. The maids have already prepared your tea at your quarters. Per His Majesty's request. Didu adds, smiling with just as much glee as the rest. He has been looking forward to your arrival. Seriously, the boar has been talking non-stop of your arrival this past week. Felix sighs. You're married and have known each other for almost a decade, yet you still act like youngsters foolishly in love. As if you don't act the same way behind closed doors, Faye. Sylvain teases. This guy, when are you gonna stop putting on the tough act, huh? Thank you, everyone. Byleth says, her heart swelling with joy. It's kind of you to stop by. Ingrid wanted to come, believe me, but she's going to be due in a couple of weeks now. Sylvain says. How is she? She's handling it beautifully. His smile is so bright as he says that, a deep red flushing his cheeks. Don't want to be away for that long. I'll be leaving by sundown. We'll be staying here for one more week. Felix says. His Majesty requested for our help while you get yourself settled. You don't have to. No, we insist. Annette holds her hands. We don't want you overexerting yourself now, do we? The last thing you want is to hear the yammering of the nobles when you just stepped foot in kingdom grounds. Felix chides. There is nothing much to be concerned with, anyhow. The relics have all been sealed. House Karen might only be looking for some final settlements, so we'll just have to agree with their terms to shut them up. You can leave that to us. Annette says with confidence. Byleth hesitates for a moment. But her eyes catch how Dimitri holds her hand now, squeezing it reassuringly. She takes a breath, recollecting herself. You're right. I will leave it up to you then. Sylvain smiles with relief. It's been a long road, but we finally made it. Byleth and Dimitri exchange smiles of their own. Indeed. She says. And now you two can finally be together. Sylvain grins. You don't know how sappy His Majesty can become. He gets really lonely without you. Sylvain, please, enough. Dimitri squirms. Sorry. He chuckles. He pauses, however. Ash, is everything all right? All heads turn to the knight now, who blinks out of his daze. What? He jolts, standing upright. Oh. Sorry. It's nothing. Byleth stares at him for a while, pondering. The image of Yuri pops in her mind, and she wonders if Ash is thinking about him. Even though their memories of this world are more vivid than the other, she doubts that the feelings attached to it will go away. Love is difficult to forget, after all. Anyway, we should go get you settled down. Annette claps her hands together. Wait, Byleth says, turning to Dimitri. Before that, I want to say hi to him. Dimitri nods. He should have finished his training with Gustav by now. Let me bring you to him. They spot the boy by the garden, after Gustav had told them he fled the training grounds on his own immediately afterward. The boy squats down, staring at a butterfly that lands on one of the potted plants. Dimitri encouragingly smiles at her, gesturing for her to talk to him. Hello, kid. She says, kneeling by his side. He looks back at her rather blankly. Hello, Byleth. She smiles at him nonetheless, looking back at the potted plant. How have you been adjusting to the kingdom? Am all right. The people are nice. He pauses. They're not avoiding me. That's good. Byleth says. The two sit in comfortable silence. There is something about him that reminds her of her father. There is no need for any words to be exchanged between them for them to have an understanding. Byleth finds that in silences like these is where she is most relaxed. Byleth and Dimitri found him as an orphan by the outskirts of Sreng after one of their visits to Duskur. At the time, they did not know if they were capable of bearing children, let alone know if they were ready to face the risks of trying. It did not take them long at all to decide that they wanted to bring the boy under their care. And they couldn't care less for any of the protests of the nobles nor their persistence to uphold traditions that children of the family must only carry blood. Not after everything they've been through. For once, the two decided to do what they want without any inkling of hesitation. Although this boy does not look like either of them with his brown tuft of hair that matched his eyes, which is anything but outlandish, unlike Byleth and Dimitri's own features combined, the two will not consider him to be anything other than their son. And he will have just as much right to become the heir to the throne when the time comes. The butterfly flutters away, finally breaking them out of their serenity. "Are you hungry?" Byleth asks. "I can prepare something for you at the kitchen. Do you want to come?" The boy shyly nods, and he has a head start as he walks back inside. "He has been warming up to the palace," Dimitri says as they watch over him. "But I'm sure he will be fully at home now that you're here." "I hope so." Byleth smiles. As the two finally find solace in their quarters in the middle of the night, Byleth can't help but stare at her husband again, and the scar over his eye. The eye that used to be pale from blindness, now shining a deep blue that matches the sky. "Am I that interesting to look at?" Dimitri asks, blushing deeply. "Always." She smiles teasingly. She touches the scar with her thumb now gently, as if worried he could still feel pain. "It's nice to see you in full view like this," she says fondly. "It gives you a rugged look." "Rugged?" He laughs amusingly. She nods. "I don't think the eye patch was all that comfortable to wear." "You don't feel it after a while?" he replies. "I had to wear it to prevent any infections." She hums, tracing over the scar mindlessly. "Does it still hurt?" she asks. He holds her hand, leaning against it. "No. Not anymore." She swallows thickly, shaking her head. "Not that." His smile fades slightly. "When I went into that void," she says, "I knew you didn't want me to do it. I'm sorry." He sighs softly, bringing her closer to him. "I know it wasn't intentional," he says. Even so, Byleth can never forget the anguish in his face. "We tend to hurt others when we are drowned in our own darkness," Dimitri tells her, pushing her hair back to look at her more clearly under the moonlight. "But what's important is that you find the light again. That's what you did. What we did, together." He presses his lips against her forehead. "So, there's no need to apologize anymore, beloved. There is nothing more to forgive." Her heart beats against his, matching in rhythm steadily but quickly. "Okay," she whispers. "However, you are not the only one," Dimitri says. Suddenly, he turns over his back, burying his face in his hands. She watches him curiously. "Dimitri. I remember what happened." Dimitri shivers. "In that life. What's wrong?" He stays silent for a long moment. "Actually, I don't want to talk about it." "Are you okay?" Suddenly, he squirms so intensely, now hiding his face behind a pillow. "I just cannot believe I was engaged to that Viscount." Byleth's brows raise in amusement. "It is not that surprising. She's an intelligent and sophisticated woman. He shivers again, now looking at her devastatingly. "Please, beloved, stop. I don't think we can handle 2 seconds in a room together. The thought of it is just chilling." He grunts. "And I can never forget the look on your face when you found out. I might as well be as much a philanderer as Sylvain back at the academy. Now, that is overdoing it. This will haunt me worse than anything else. I don't think I can so much as look at her anymore." Byleth giggles, the hurt of that forgotten past no longer having a hold on her, and instead, is replaced with a feeling of entertainment. His brows furrow in annoyance. "I am glad you find humor in my situation." She gives him a peck, now cuddling into his arms. "You will just have to forget that now, my love. You have me now." He calms down when she says that. His brows immediately relax, as he relishes in her warmth. Yes. I do. Are you sure you should strain yourself this much? Dmitri asks, worry etched all over his face. I assure you, it will be all right. Byleth says. A morning stroll might just do good for the baby. If you're so worried, you should join me. As if that is even a question. Dmitri grumbles, holding out his hand for her to take as they go down to the palace doors. Heading out for a walk, Your Majesties. Ash, who is stationed by the doors, asks. Good morning to you too, Ash. Dmitri chuckles. Yes, we are. The path is quite thickened with snow this morning. He says. Allow me to escort you and ready the horses. Right, thank you. Dmitri smiles at him, before he salutes and heads out of the palace first. Dmitri then bundles Byleth up in her coat and shawl. But despite how warm she already looks, he cannot help but fidget. Maybe you should have my cloak too, Dash. Dmitri. She chides, and he stiffens as if he was just scolded by his professor. She breaks into a smile. Your worry is endearing, but it will be all right. You're here to protect me, aren't you? Of course. Then there's nothing to be afraid of. She strokes his cheek affectionately. Come, let's go. I need a walk. They arrive at the village under Ash's guidance and take Byleth's much-needed stroll in the village. The townspeople greet her with such joy, and she pays no mind stopping ever so often to talk with them. When she returned 9 months ago, they were all in tears as they saw her on the balcony of the palace, after Dmitri had announced of her rescue. What is this? Byleth had asked Dmitri, dumbfounded by the cheers and chanting of her name. They rejoice for you, beloved. He told her. Just as they need their king, they also need their queen. The cheers did not stop for so long, and Byleth couldn't help but be speechless from it all. This is a happy time. Dmitri said. It is truly a blessing that you have returned. It is why Byleth feels at home in the kingdom. Apart from being with who she loved, she was also one with the people, allowing a temporary escape away from the criticisms of the nobles. They are about to return back to the entrance of the village when Ash stops. Ash. Dmitri calls out. Is everything all right? Byleth watches how he is frozen in place. But when she looks beyond him, she sees why. From afar, they see a group of people crowding by one of the merchant stalls. One, in particular, stands out from the rest. Is that Dash? Byleth gasps. Without wasting another second, Ash drops his weapon and sprints away. From afar, Yuri does the same. The two collide with each other, embracing each other as they tremble under the cold. Byleth can hear Ash sob from where she's standing. They found each other. Byleth releases out a deep breath, a weight lifting from her shoulders. Indeed. Dmitri mutters, just as stunned at the sight. Their worlds are truly, finally, melding as one. That guy went all the way from the abyss to get here. Byleth and Dmitri turn to the voice. If they can become even more shocked, they are now as they see who stands before them. Shay peers at the two with his arms crossed, rather impassively. Shay. Dmitri is the first to blurt it out. But the man tilts his head. Oh, how, do you know my name? You're here too. Byleth gasps. Shay steps back, clearly uncomfortable. Well, I mean, I've never been here in the first place. His teeth start to chatter. It's freezing, by the way. How do you guys survive this? I shouldn't have agreed to come and just stayed at the abyss. Byleth and Dmitri exchange looks, confused by their friend's sudden loss of memory. Everyone seems to have all of their memories from both worlds, why does he not? It irks Byleth now that she cannot ask Suthis for the answer. But even she said she knew nothing of the mystery that entails if the seal was not used to restore the barriers. Perhaps it is because of Epimenides' complete disappearance from the universe. Or the wipeout of those who slither in the dark. Anyway, I'm gonna head back to the inn. Shay smiles politely at them despite his endless shivering. Before he starts to walk away, Byleth speaks. Come visit the kingdom. He looks at her, confused. When you can. She continues. I'm sure you'll reunite with some nice friends. Or we will go visit you. Shay hums. Oh, okay. Great. She pumps her fists. It's a promise. After all, this man saved the world, and somehow, even had to sacrifice his memories to bring her back. There's no way she won't give a helping hand after that. There are more mysteries that Byleth ponders about as the night falls. Under the starry sky, Byleth heads to the back of the palace grounds, where the graves of their loved ones lay. Although the Blue Lions survive here on the other side, some are not so lucky. Dimitri and Byleth, together with their little boy, stand over the graves of their fathers. The late king and Rodrigue lay side by side, and even that of Geralt Eisners, which had been moved from the church to the kingdom when she became queen. Who are they? The little boy asks. Our family. Byleth answers. Fathers who raised us. He looks up at them both. You are orphans as well. Byleth nods. We are the same in that regard. Everybody who died were unable to come back to them. Even after a search for the Black Eagles for months after her return, all she found were their gravestones, as they rest peacefully under imperial soil. She wonders if she could have saved them. If there was a way to bring them back to life upon their worlds colliding. If this didn't have to be the answer. Byleth realizes now that she is not one for mysteries, as she always had the power of the divine pulse to help her. Solving them on her own without the guidance of the goddess is something that is rather foreign to her. Perhaps she will never find the answers that she is looking for. But she supposes, she doesn't mind staying in the dark of this kind. Do you think about them? The boy asks. Your fathers. All the time. Dimitri answers him, his voice as soft as the breeze. How do you live with it? Byleth and Dimitri find comfort in each other's hands as they dwell on the question. One day, we'll explain them to you. Byleth says. How those thoughts came. Why they won't ever really go away. But for now, how we live through it, is to move forward and believe in the good that life has to offer. She looks up at the stars, wondering if somewhere in those galaxies, another version of her father. Dimitri's father. Rodrigue, and the Black Eagles all live their lives to the fullest. But in this world, she has to accept that the grief and the what-ifs that stir in her mind will inevitably be with her forever. Perhaps she will never stop blaming herself for what she's done. But that will not stop her from being hopeful. It will not stop her from redeeming herself and creating a better future for the people she loves that still do live on and carry the memories of those lost with them. When she looks at her husband who stands by her side, she knows that she is not alone. He will be there to weather it with her unconditionally. For protecting each other is the best thing they know how to do. And when they walk back inside the palace with their boy side by side, and a baby of their own that she carries within her, she knows that their love will only continue to grow, breaking the cycle of hate and blame that they held within themselves for so long. Check the description for the links to the author.